Chapter 341 White Hairs of Old Age. The middle-aged man's eyes had a glimpse of gloominess, slowly saying, just based on the fact that genius doctor she is able to cause Feng Lian-ing, a level 5 doctor, to lose face in front of everyone. As well as the fact that His Highness Hell King stands behind genius doctor she. I'm willing to gamble, so I'm going to gamble my desire for revenge on genius doctor she. The corner of Heshi's mouth curved a bit, weighing the jade box in her hand. Nodding her head, good, considering this divine dragon fruit, I promise you. The middle-aged man's face finally showed a slight smile. He took out a silver talisman from his arms and handed it over to Heshi, respectfully saying, this is my personally prescribed 1,000-mile talisman. Even though it can only be used once, as long as you burn this talisman, then no matter what corner genius doctor she is at in the Miluo continent, I will be able to receive the message at any end of the earth. Heshi took the silver talisman, slightly swaying. She watched the middle-aged man stumbling back to his wife's side, mournfully crying as he carried her cold corpse. Suddenly, a pair of hands covered her eyes, blocking her line of sight. Nangong Yu's low and gentle voice sounded out, don't look anymore, Shiren this king, we will definitely live together until we have white hairs of old age. There won't be a day where we're separated by life and death. Heshi took his show and turned around to glare at him. Who will live together and have white hairs of old age with you? Don't you have your Feng Yan Ling Mimi? One? Nangong Yu reached his hand out to pinch her nose. The expression on his face expressed both helplessness and pampering. Sheer, if you say this again, I'll take it as if you're jealous of me. Heshi slapped his hand. Her gaze landed on the jade box. She must immediately go back into her space to help little golden dragon absorb the spiritual power from the divine dragon fruit. But to be able to enter her space, she had to be asleep. Heshi grabbed at Nangong Yu's sleeves and softly said, lean your shoulder down. Not waiting for him to respond, she leaned her head against his shoulder, closed her eyes and entered her space. At first, Nangong Yu stared blankly. But soon after, his mouth curved up into a gentle and sweet expression. He reached his hands out to bring the sleeping girl into his embrace. This girl must have been so busy these past few days, she must be so tired. But Heshi, who had entered her space, was shocked. In the entirety of her space, she couldn't spot Dan Dan's figure. She didn't even know where the purple abyss vine ran off to, it only left a small purple trunk in front of the spot Heshi was standing at. Heshi yelled for Dan Dan several times, however, she didn't receive any response. This scared Heshi so much, her complexion changed. It wasn't until Purple Abyss Vine linked to her again that she let out a sigh of relief. Afterwards, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Her space created a screen. The screen showed a vast medicinal field. Inside the vast medicinal field there was a pink pig and the Purple Abyss Vine happily traveling back. Having gotten their location, the pair immediately ate a green spiritual plant, completely devouring it. However, her space didn't have any high-level spiritual plants in it. But the strange thing was that when she was just recently outside, she didn't find any changes in the medicinal field. Through the help of the Purple Abyss Vine, Heshi was able to establish a connection to her own small spoiled chowhound. Dan Dan, didn't you say there were terrifying things inside this medicinal field, causing you to be very afraid? Dan Dan was just eating to his heart's content, and when he heard Heshi's question, he couldn't answer truthfully. After a while, he was finally full and started giggling. Mimi, younger sister. In this situation Feng Yanling is not his blood-related sister. Chapter 342 Eating while packing leftovers. Mother, the food here tastes good. Even though it's black and smelly, when I eat it, Dan Dan feels as if it tastes very good. The strength that bad woman destroyed is all back too. Black and smelly? Heshi was both astounded and worried. Dan Dan, are you sure you can eat these spiritual plants? What about the intoxicated blood poison? Dan Dan rolled around in the medicinal field, exposing his white round belly. Happily laughing, he said, Mother is dumb. Because there is anti-purple abyss here, there's no possible way to be poisoned. The smelly and black items have been given to anti-purple abyss. The rest are all for Dan Dan. Ah woo! Ah woo! It's so delicious. Mother, do you want some too? Anti-purple abyss. These two, when did their relationship become so good? Moreover, why has he been calling purple abyss vine anti-purple abyss? Shouting ant towards a plant. Dan, are you sure your logic is sound? Anti-purple abyss will quickly arrange a difficult fantasy array. We are here to eat. Together, mother and that friendly older brother didn't even find out. 1. So while we were eating, we were also packing leftovers. Therefore, if we want to continue eating in your space, we can. Mother, is Dan clever? Very good. Unexpectedly, he even knew about packing leftovers. He really is clever. At the same time, Hushi felt Purple Abyss Vine's idea. Incomparably proud, the little Purple Abyss Vine sat in her space, swaying around as if expectantly awaiting Hushi's praise. Hushi's mouth twitched, but she looked at the high-level spiritual plant that got thrown into her space. Going forward to touch Purple Abyss Vine's trunk, encouraging it. The Purple Abyss Vine suddenly began swaying more joyfully, adopting the appearance of an epileptic. Hushi swore that if the high-grade spiritual plant could talk, it would have been laughing uncontrollably by now. But after determining that these two wouldn't run into any problems, she let out a sigh of relief. In fact, the spiritual medicines in this 100-herb garden were truly real. But she didn't know why. For some reason, there were many spiritual plants in this garden. The levels of these magical plants weren't high, but they were very much like weeds. Their vitality was also extremely vigorous. After growing for a millennium, they covered nearly the entirety of the medicinal field. From the outside, the magical and spiritual plants looked the exact same. However, the magical plants would secrete a poison. For example, these specific magical plants would exude the intoxicated blood poison. And once a soldier died of poisoning from these plants, their body would rot into the soil and the spiritual energy would seep into the air, becoming the best nourishment for these magical plants. In fact, in the beginning, these magical plants weren't scary. Especially in the central plains of Mi-Luo continent, one's chance of ever encountering these plants was exceptionally low. There also wasn't any soil to nourish the magical plants, to add on to the fact that these plants were a rare sight. As a result, so many high-level soldiers, including Feng Yunjing, didn't recognize these magical plants. However, Purple Abyss Vine was different. It was originally a level 5 magical plant, so these low-level magical plants were not only crushed, because they contained a strong spiritual spirit, they also became Dan and Purple Abyss Vine's food. Those genuine spiritual plants from the medicinal field were all thrown into her space by Dan, so Hushi didn't bother with those two gluttonous individuals. She turned to look at the little golden dragon's current situation. At this moment, the little golden dragon was still fast asleep. Although the wounds on his body seemed to have healed, his whole spirit was still very poor. 1. Anti-Purple Abyss will quickly arrange a difficult fantasy array. We are here to eat. Together, mother and that friendly older brother didn't even find out. I'm not too sure what the author meant here. Apologies for this. Chapter 343 Real Identity. Hushi had seen the method to taking the divine dragon fruit in the All Living Things record. Very quickly, she used a pure fire spiritual power to extract juice from the divine dragon fruit. It dripped into the little golden dragon's mouth. Afterward, little golden dragon's body emitted light golden color. Its originally dim scales got a gloss to them. The little golden dragon struggled to open its eyes and saw the familiar figure. The figure emitted the sweet fragrance of grass and wood. Although the smell was weak, it let the little golden dragon feel as if this figure was trustworthy and dependable. It was truly strange. This was the formidable golden dragon, but he wanted to depend on a weak mortal girl. The little golden dragon's whole heart was heavy and quickly closed its eyes again. Its tail subconsciously curled around Hushi's wrist, brushing against her palm. Hushi let out a sigh of relief, glancing over the little golden dragon again to ensure that its injury was healed. Following that, she looked towards her hand, which was holding the divine dragon fruit that had already lost all its spiritual power and juice. All that was left was a layer of skin and the pit. But if she planted the pit in her space, would it sprout and grow more fruit? Heshi decided to indulge in her fantasies and took the divine dragon fruit's pit to plant in the ancient rhyme spirit field. She gave the little golden dragon more drops of spiritual spring water. Then she left her space. When Heshi opened her eyes, she felt a male near her. Heshi's whole face turned red when she discovered that her whole body was nestled in Nangong Yu's embrace and her head was resting on his stomach. She clearly only borrowed his shoulder to lean on. Heshi stood up straight and pushed herself out of Nangong Yu's hug. She heard his voice laced with regret saying, "Sheer, why don't you sleep a little longer? This king's shoulder is always open for you to lean on." Heshi grinded her teeth, preparing to slap Nangong Yu. But suddenly, a body began to rot, emitting a foul smell. A man from the crowd came out, running towards Heshi and throwing himself at her. Without needing Nangong Yu's command, Hell King Manor's bodyguards quickly came forward to block the man. However, the man refused to let this stop him. Repeatedly crying, his hoarse voice rang out, "Shiyu, I know your real identity. I know who you are. As long as you save me, I'll tell you your true identity." Nangong Yu's eyebrows furrowed. The man's yelling caught a lot of the surrounding people's attention. He quickly covered them with a void spiritual barrier, keeping everyone's prying ears out. He looked at this man, whose face was completely covered in blood, making people unable to make out his true facial features. Then, he coldly said, "Who are you? If you want the antidote, why don't you just take out a talisman to exchange for it?" The man shivered under Nangong Yu's gaze, his voice trembled. "Your Highness Hell King, please spare this humble one's life. I am the elder of Nalan family, Nalan Yenming." Hearing these words, Nangong Yu's eyebrows jumped up. Without speaking, he and Heshi both looked towards each other. Heshi's expression was somewhat grave. Nowadays, her appearance was completely different from Nalan Heshi's. Although this was someone from Nalan family, they still shouldn't be able to recognize her. But Nalan Yenming said he recognized her? Nalan Yenming didn't see the change in Heshi and Nangong Yu's complexions, but he still sucked in a breath. "I already exchanged my talisman for the antidote, but it still wasn't enough to completely get rid of the poison in my body. The antidote wasn't able to completely detoxify the poison?" Heshi's eyebrows raised. "What were you doing previously?" Nalan Yenming's eyes flashed. However, his life was on the line, so he didn't dare to conceal anything and began to immediately explain the situation. Chapter 344. Nalan Yenming. As it turns out, Nalan Yenming originally entered the sealed dragon domain's secret territory with many life-saving pills gifted from Nalan Jingza. One of these pills was the famous 9 unequal wrongs pill. This pill would be able to save someone, no matter how serious the poison. And if the poison couldn't be completely relieved, it would at least delay the spread of the poison. It's due to this pill that Nalan Jingza was able to enter the Doctors Association as a rank 3 doctor. The Doctors Association only allowed rank 4 doctors in, and each Doctors Association member had a unique and unmatched skill. With Nalan Jingza's ability, he wouldn't be eligible to enter the Doctors Association. Actually, Nalan Yenming entered the medicinal field at the same time as Heshi's group. When the mist was cleared, many warriors seized the opportunity to enter the medicinal field, and Nalan Yenming was one of them. In the beginning, Nalan Yenming didn't enter the medicinal field, so he didn't get poisoned. However, he wanted to curry favor with the Feng family, and ultimately entered. In the end, he wasn't careful enough and touched some of the pus. Once he got affected by this strange intoxicated blood poison, he immediately ate his 9 unequal wrongs pill, believing that the poison wouldn't be able to kill him. Unfortunately, he found out that after eating his 9 unequal wrongs pill, it didn't detoxify the poison. On the other hand, it seemed to cause the poison to rot his body much faster than others. Adding on to the fact that Feng Lianying was unable to treat people using her 5 elements blood coagulation pill, Nalan Yenming thought he was utterly screwed. However, he didn't expect a youngster at only foundation establishment stage, named Shiyu, would be able to successfully detoxify people. It wasn't until this moment that Nalan Yenming started to take a closer look at Heshi, and the more he looked, the more shocked he became. Because the appearance of the godly doctor named Shiyu was uncannily similar to that person. And that person's medical skills was also exceptional, exactly the same as the ones this person in front of him had. Nalan family also obtained some of that person's medicinal inheritance, which was the only reason it was able to reach the status it had today. The more Nalan Yenming thought, the more scared he became and the more excited he became. If he was able to bring this youngster back to Nalan family, then Nalan Manor's glory would be around the corner. But because Hell King supported Shiyu, Nalan Yenming didn't dare to act blindly without thinking. However, he didn't expect that because he had taken the 9 unequal wrongs pill, even though he took the antidote, the poison didn't completely improve like everyone else. Although it delayed the poison taking his life, the poison was still spreading in his body. Seeing that he was going to meet a violent death soon, he disregarded Hell King's power and rushed towards Heshi. Contrary to one might think, after hearing that Nalan Yenming took the 9 unequal wrongs pill, Heshi immediately knew what had happened. Although the 9 unequal wrongs pill contained detoxification qualities, it also had large quantities of spiritual power, which happened to be what nourished the intoxicated blood poison in Nalan Yenming's body. So naturally, her antidote wasn't enough to completely detoxify Nalan Yenming. Heshi squinted her eyes at the kneeling blood man and slowly said, "You said you knew my real identity. What do you mean?" Nalan Yenming suddenly became lively again, hurriedly taking out a scroll from his storage ring to hand to Heshi. Heshi slowly unrolled the scroll, and as the picture slowly unfolded, a beautiful woman in palace clothing came into view. Chapter 345. Third Young Master Nalan Ziyun. At this time, Wu Yu and Gu Lu Feng both walked up and stood behind Heshi, but when they saw the woman in the scroll's appearance, they sucked in a cold breath. This woman's phoenix eyes, perfect and jade-like skin resembled Jiutian Xuanu, as if she, Jiutian Xuanu, had come back down to the secular world. But what was the most shocking was that this woman's appearance was 78% the same as Heshi's. Looking closely at Heshi, people could almost image Heshi in woman's clothing. Gu Lu Feng's eyes held enthusiasm and shock, but he quickly pushed his feelings away, forcibly suppressing his throbbing heart. Wu Yu couldn't help but exclaim out in surprise, "This isn't his family's Wang Fei, right?" He looked at Nangong Yu, then at Heshi and saw that his master's facial expression remained unperturbed. Not only that, his tender eyes never once stopped looking at Heshi. Heshi already knew that the woman in the scroll was this body's mother, Yin Linyue. However, Heshi looked towards Nalan Yenming and indifferently asked, "Who is this?" Nalan Yenming said at once, "You first must save me. As long as you save my life, I'll tell you everything you want to know." Heshi sneered at him, looking at him condescendingly. "I don't accept your deal." Finished speaking, Heshi turned and began to walk away. Seeing her carefree appearance, Nalan Yenming panicked. He hurriedly walked 2 steps forward, loudly saying, "I'll talk. This is Yin Linyue. She is the concubine of the current head of Nalan family, Nalan Jingzhu." Slowing down, Nalan Yenming lowered his voice and with a dignified look, he slowly said, "And you're most likely the child that Nalan family lost more than 10 years before, Nalan Ziyun." Heshi's heart was slightly moved but her face remained unmoved. She sneered, "Nalan Ziyun? Do you take me as a 3-year-old child, thinking you'll fool me so easily? In all of Yanjing City, who doesn't know that Nalan Manor's third young master, Nalan Ziyun, was sent off to become a disciple of a large sect's master? If I am Nalan Ziyun, then who was the person sent away to the large sect?" Nalan Yenming's eyes were anxious, his eyes showing his internal struggle. However, he kept insisting, "You must believe me. You truly are Nalan Ziyun. You are my Nalan family's child. If not, then how could your appearance so closely resemble Yin Linyue's?" Heshi merely sneered, "In this world, how many people look alike? This is just some insignificant picture, yet you want me to believe your lies. Do you take me as an idiot?" Nalan Yenming felt the poison in his body seem to worsen. Seeing that Heshi didn't believe him, he felt both fear and hate. He thought, just wait for this stinky boy to return to Nalan family. He must torture this youngster, only then can he eliminate today's humiliation. However, he didn't dare to show his resentment on his face. After hesitating for a while, he had no other choice but to clench his teeth and neutrally say, I'm sure that you are Nalan family's third young master, Nalan Ziyun. Because that other Nalan Ziyun is a fake, brought in by Nalan Jingza in order to replace that missing child. Apart from Nalan Jingza, only I and the third elder know of this matter. As Nalan Yenming said this, he was also rolling around on the floor due to the pain. As he was rolling around, black blood continually leaked out of the wound on his body. Seeing this scene, it was evident that the intoxicated blood poison in his body had completely broke out. 1. Jiutian Xuannu is a fairy in Chinese mythology. Here is her Wikipedia page. Chapter 346. Where did he truly go? Save me! Quickly save me! I am Nalan family's great elder. I'm the only one who can bring you back to Nalan family. I'm the only one who can get you to recognize your ancestors. Do you hear me? Quickly save me! If you want to blame something, then blame the fact that you're Nalan family's people. He coldly chuckled. Nobody knew when another bottle appeared in her hands, but she lightly sprinkled the medicine out. Immediately, Nalan Yenming's shrieks became fiercer and his body was unable to keep rolling. He was only able to lie on the floor and twitch. The wound on his body burst open and black blood and pus sprayed everywhere. In the blink of an eye, a puddle of blood formed. Whilst He was sprinkling her medicine on Nalan Yenming, Nangong Yu had long separated the crowd from Nalan Yenming. At this moment, he saw that even Nalan Yenming's skeleton was gone. However, Heshi's gaze was filled with deep concentration. He thought that Heshi was grieving and couldn't help but walk up to Heshi, taking her into his arms and hugging her closely. Softly saying, "No matter what type of person you are or what sort of identity you have, in my heart, you are still my Shir. You are still my Wangfei." Heshi was distracted for a while. By the time she realized that this fellow was comforting her, she couldn't help but feel as if it's simultaneously somewhat funny and moving. Shaking her head, regarding Nalan family's people, as far as I'm concerned, they're just insignificant strangers to me. How can I be affected by their matters, life or death? I was merely thinking about Nalan Ziyun. Heshi's only impression on Nalan Ziyun, this younger brother, was from when she was merely 5 years old. At that time, they were still living in the small courtyard, mutually dependent for life. However, when Nalan Heshi was 5, she fell ill with a fever. After she woke up, she never saw her younger brother again. Wet Nurse Chen had told her Nalan Manor's people had taken her younger brother away. The previous Nalan Heshi had gone to Nalan Manor to inquire about this matter. But it was never disclosed to her that her younger brother wasn't even in Nalan Manor anymore. In fact, he was sent away to study in a sect. Time flies and in the blink of an eye, 10 or so odd years had passed. Nalan Heshi had already given up on seeing her little brother again. However, that doesn't mean she doesn't miss him. This was actually one of Nalan Heshi's last desires before she died. She wishes to confirm that her younger brother has lived well. Now Nalan Yenming told her that the third young master, Nalan Ziyun, studying at the sect was fake? Then where did he truly go? Even if Nalan Ziyun died at the age of 5, nobody would have pursued the matter. Why did Nalan Jingza still bring out a fake Nalan Ziyun? After listening to Heshi's words, he knew that she wasn't grieving and Nangong Yu let out a breath. Lightly stroking her hair, "You can rest assured, I'll send people to go investigate Nalan Ziyun." Heshi nodded her head and was just about to speak when she suddenly heard the sound of something plopping coming from within the medicinal field. Soon after, a flash of purple also appeared. Dan and the purple abyss vine, who were originally wreaking havoc inside the medicinal field, had returned into her space. Heshi didn't enter the space and could only watch as Dan's whole body was enveloped in a spiritual aura. His small stomach was perfectly round and he seemed to have finally eaten enough. Heshi suddenly felt as if she didn't know whether to laugh or cry, scolding him, "Little chowhound." But before she could put her heart down, purple abyss vine energetically came up and its anxious thoughts were felt by Heshi. The purple abyss vine was apparently very uneasy and fretful. However, it had no way to clearly express what it felt uneasy about. Heshi was puzzled when suddenly a strong wave of spiritual force burst out from inside the medicinal field. 1. Mutually dependent for life, to rely on one another for survival. Chapter 347 completely healed immediately after, a dazzling white light beam descended from the sky. Along with the beam came an immense force of spiritual power pushing down on the medicinal field. When the beam of light made contact, it quickly spread. In the blink of an eye, it covered every inch of the ground in the medicinal field. To add on to that, all the warriors standing in the middle of the light beam seemed to be isolated from everyone else. They seemed to have become invisible, nobody could see or hear them anymore. Everyone couldn't help but panic. Most of all, this group of people who just experienced the impact of intoxicated blood poison. At this moment, their hearts were filled with fear of the unknown. Nangong Yu's response quickly covered Heshi and Qing Long with his void spiritual barrier. Wu Yu waited for everyone else to be enveloped. However, just as he was about to pull Heshi into his embrace, a green beam quickly shot towards Heshi. For a moment, Heshi didn't even process what had happened. She only felt a boom in her head, and following that, everything in front of her eyes changed. After returning back to her soul, Heshi found herself in both an unfamiliar yet familiar place. She said it was familiar because this was the place she had met the little golden dragon and lifted its seal. She said it was unfamiliar because this originally dusky and narrow space had undergone some large changes. The whole space had become gold and jade in glorious splendor, too. There were countless night pearls hanging from the ceiling, giving off a soft yet bright light. Originally, there were fuzzy mirrors all around, but now they all seemed clear. The mirror showed the scene inside the secret territory, including Nangong Yu and everyone else's images. However, currently the images in the mirror were all frozen, as if time had completely stopped in the secret territory. There was suspicion in Heshi's heart. She secretly thought, could it be that because the little golden dragon ate the divine dragon fruit and woke up, bringing her back to his original nest? At this moment, she heard the little golden dragon's old and decrepit voice. Woman, at least one can say you have a good heart. You know that Benzong, 3, got such an injury in order to save you, so you obtained the divine dragon fruit for Benzong. At least Benzong's efforts in Zijin Palace weren't wasted. After that was said, a very small gold dragon sitting on a pink cloud came down in front of Heshi. It seems that the little golden dragon had completely healed by now. The golden scales on his body were glistening. Along with his body's originally thumb-sized width got wider. However, the cotton candy-like pink cloud he was riding on, when matched with his tiny body, didn't match the fact that he was the noble and mighty golden dragon. Heshi restrained herself from smiling. At least your scales resemble a dragon's now, unlike before when someone could have mistaken you as a snake. The little golden dragon suddenly became angry at Heshi, pointing at her and cursing incessantly. Heshi suddenly got rid of her teasing tone. No matter what, thank you for protecting Dan Dan at Zijin Palace, and thank you for protecting me too. The little golden dragon's scolding stopped and coldly snorted. This still isn't good enough. Heshi didn't mind his arrogant character and changed the subject. As long as you're good, then it's good. Why did you suddenly bring me back to this room? What of this matter of me bringing you back? Having heard what was said, the little golden dragon raised its voice. It's clearly you who triggered the secret territory's restriction, starting the transfer of the secret territory's controlling right. 1. After returning back to her soul. In this case, Heshi didn't actually leave her soul, she just returned from La La Land. 2. Gold and jade in glorious splendor, a dazzling sight. 3. Benzong. Literally translates as the senior. Chapter 348 Heaven-defying luck. The little golden dragon's words alarmed Heshi. The secret territory's controlling right? How could this be? After becoming the descendant of Zijin Palace, the sealed dragon territory was already considered hers. But the information left by the original master of Zijin Palace did pass on information saying that obtaining the controlling right over the secret territory wasn't an easy task. Even if the secret territory closes, she still may not obtain it. Heshi originally didn't hold much hope. When she was in the 100 Herb Mist, she clearly didn't do much. So how did she still obtain the controlling right to the secret territory? The little golden dragon raised his head, groaning. Even if I don't want to admit it, but you, woman, still have some abilities. Although you can't be compared to my previous master, but to let me reluctantly admit this to you isn't an impossible thing. Having said this, the little golden dragon pointed at the floor and lowered its voice. If you want to obtain control over sealed dragon domain's secret territory, then, first, you must have remarkable talent and willpower. You were already verified when you inherited the Zijin Palace. Second, you need to go through and collect the 5 heavenly spiritual treasures from Greenwood Realm, Water Moon Realm, Burning Heaven Realm, Ice Snow Realm, and Desolate Desert Realm in order to prove that you've mastered the strength of the secret territory. Originally, this is extremely hard to accomplish. However, who could have thought that you saved so many people and by an accident arising from many causes, you managed to get all 5 of the secret territory's heavenly spiritual treasures. However, having just these treasures isn't enough. You have to be able to condense enough spiritual power to touch the secret territory's restriction barrier. In fact, this can only be done by gold core stage and above martial artists. However, due to the fact that, just now, Dan and your Purple Abyss Vine ate so many magical plants, it was just enough to touch the secret territory's restriction barrier. Although the little golden dragon was disoriented at the time, due to his contract with Heshi, he was still able to clearly see everything outside the space. Even he had to sigh, this little girl has a formidable amount of strength and potential. In addition, she also had luck that defied the heavens. Requirements which were supposed to be difficult to accomplish was, unexpectedly, easily attained by her. Thinking up to here, the little golden dragon coldly snorted and flew higher up. Keeping his arrogant character, he coldly said, "And of course, the most important point is that you must be able to become the master Benzin has genuinely approved of. That means that I must willingly enter a life and death blood contract with you, which can't be reversed, not the originally dispensable contract we had. By becoming Benzin's genuine master, to obtain my whole heart's willing approval, only then can you become the secret territory's true master." As soon as the little golden dragon said this, it swooped down, and when it neared the side of Heshi's neck, it firmly bit down. For a while Heshi didn't see anything. She didn't have enough time to dodge, she only felt the pain in her neck. Soon after, a gold-colored beam enveloped both her and the little golden dragon. Moments later, the golden beam scattered and the wound on Heshi's neck disappeared without a trace. However, the golden mark of a dragon appeared on the hollow of her palm. This golden mark was completely different from the gold lines she received when she and the little golden dragon initially drew their contract. This mark was incomparably clear, it seemed to have gone deep into her flesh. It also held a faint feeling of great power. Although the golden dragon mark quickly disappeared from Heshi's palm, she was still able to clearly sense it. It seemed as if there was a strange memory that didn't belong to her, burned into her mind. Heshi knew that these memories were part of the dragon race's inheritance. But now, these memories were fuzzy and she was only able to see one sentence clearly, one, by an accident arising from many causes, a freak combination of facts. Chapter 349 The Best Timing Through Blood, to serve as my brand. Abandon hatred, forget glory, thousands of generations, never betraying. May the dragon race's glory from millions of years prior, one day appear again. Heshi didn't understand much of what this sentence meant, but strangely enough, she could sense the sorrow, despair, and hope contained within the words. And at this moment, under the soles of her feet, a brilliant light suddenly started brightly shining. Just now, Heshi discovered that the design engraved on the floor of the room resembled a pentagram. Each of the 5 angles of the pentagram was perfectly aligned with one of the mirrors while she stood in the center of the pentagram. The entire pentagram was lit up and Heshi felt as if the mirrors were all flying towards her. Soon after, she was able to clearly see every nook and cranny inside the secret territory. The little golden dragon's proud voice and mischievous laughter was soon heard. When the controlling right of the secret territory is handed over, the entire secret territory is in a completely static state. This includes all the magical beasts and martial artists currently inside the secret territory. In the entire sealed dragon domain, only you and I are able to move, although this period of time is short. Moreover, later on, even if you are in control of the secret territory, You won't be able to replicate this again. The most you can do is drive the people you dislike out of the secret territory. But now, during this time, no matter what you wish to do, these people are completely unable to resist. Once Hashi heard these words, a weird smile appeared on her face. The little golden dragon's words weren't wrong. This truly was the best timing. Especially at this moment. Hashi already spotted the frozen figures of Feng Yunjing and Feng Lianying. They were currently next to a stream of spring water in the ice-snow realm. Several disciples from Lu Li sect were currently in the process of preparing to remove a nearby tiny tree. Having just received control of the secret territory, naturally, Hashi also knew of each inch of soil and treasure inside the secret territory. She knew that this stream was called the spiritual spring stream, and that tree was the spring tree. That tree was one of 3 of Miluo continent's great tree deities. Every 200 years, a liquid called Heaven's Alcohol will flow out from the spiritual spring tree's roots. When mixed with the spring water, a small puddle of spiritual spring stream will form. In Miluo continent, the Feng family was currently like the sun at noon. In addition to the fact that their skills were more talented than those of ordinary individuals, the Feng family also had a group of high-level alchemists. The pills refined by these alchemists were able to allow the children of Feng family to advance by leaps and bounds. However, it's not without harm if someone takes the pills for a long time. No matter how pure and perfect the pill was, each pill contained quantities of an individual medicine. These individual medicines would accumulate and made it easy for martial artists to go overboard when being promoted. According to research done by ancestors of Feng family, this spiritual spring tree was able to dissolve this individual medicine. Therefore, Feng Yunjing was determined to get this tree. Furthermore, this tree was difficult to locate inside the ice-snow realm. Seeing this scene, Hashi couldn't help but smile. Luckily for her, the time she received the inheritance was very good. Otherwise, Feng Yunjing would be able to take away this spiritual spring tree. Although she didn't value the tree as rare, when she thought about her enemy getting good things, she felt unhappy. To the side, the little golden dragon's mouth twitched. Unfortunately, although this standstill of time is powerful, there are some restrictions. You can't touch the bodies of martial artists. Otherwise, boss, you are the knife that erased that slut. Isn't that just death ending all your troubles? Chapter 350 Slowly settling accounts. Hashi softly smiled. To erase her with a knife, isn't that too cheap of a fate for Feng Lianying? Rest assured, my patience is very good. What we have is time. I'll slowly settle my accounts with her. Seeing that the time left for the people to remain frozen was almost up, Hashi no longer hesitated. She quickly began to manipulate the people inside the secret territory. Although she couldn't directly touch the people inside the secret territory, she could move them around. The storage items that were stored inside the storage rings that the martial artists carried around were hard for her to take. However, the charms they wore on the outside or held in their hands, she kindly took, as if they were being offered to her. Hashi's mouth picked up into a sinister smile. Looking around, she quickly made up her mind. After Feng Yunjing and his party left the Greenwood realm, they quickly found the spiritual spring tree by following the secret method that Feng family's elder alchemist provided. But there were 7 rank 5 magical beasts guarding the spiritual spring tree. Each rank 5 magical beast was equivalent to gold core stage cultivation. Feng Yunjing, Feng Lianying, and disciples of the Lu Li sect wasted a lot of labor in order to completely defeat these 7 rank 5 magical beasts. Seeing that the spiritual spring tree was so close, Feng Yunjing's eyes flashed with something. As long as he was able to obtain this tree, the danger of taking so many pills would be eliminated. Then, Feng family would be able to stand at the summit of Miluo continent. From now on, nobody on this earth would be able to fight or obstruct him. Everything he wanted, every person he wanted, he would be able to easily grasp in the palm of his hand. Everybody was filled with excitement. They were so excited that they didn't even bother to clean up the 7 rank 5 magical beasts. They took out a 9th level spiritual shovel and prepared to move the spiritual spring tree. But after a quarter of an hour, something occurred that shocked Feng Yunjing. His hand just touched one of the leaves on the spiritual spring tree before he felt the sky spin and the earth go round. When he opened his eyes, the scenery before his eyes had completely changed. The sounds of the magical beast's roars sounded in the air, rising and falling one after another. What stood in front of them wasn't 7 rank 5 magical beasts anymore. Instead, hundreds of thousands of magical spirit beasts surrounded them. These magical beasts contained 3 rank 4 magical beasts, some rank 5 and even one at rank 6. Not only that, but they were no longer located in front of the spiritual spring tree. Instead, they found themselves in a desolate desert. Feng Yunjing's face changed. He was just about to use the weapon he carried to resist the magical beasts. But he was stunned to find that the weapon that was originally in his palm had, at some unknown point, disappeared. As it turns out, Feng Lianying, Nie Jinshan, and the rest of the disciples of Lu Li sect found themselves in a similar situation. Feng Lianying had long since already been scared stupid by the magical beast's roars, and the weapon in her hand had also disappeared. She was so panicked, she found that she didn't have enough time to take out another weapon from her storage ring before a magical beast snarled and pounced towards her. But, I don't want to die. Feng Lianying shrieked and ruthlessly pulled a disciple of Lu Li sect to stand in front of her. Only a tearing sound was heard as the disciple was horribly torn apart. The Lu Li sect disciple didn't even have time to groan before they became a pool of flesh. Nie Jinshan also found himself caught off guard, and to add on to the fact, he was caught off guard by a rank 5 magical beast. He was terrified. Noticing what Feng Lianying did, he also instinctively pulled 2 Lu Li sect disciples in front of him. Feng Yunjing's cultivation level was higher than those 2, therefore he was able to take out a new weapon and kill in all directions. However, the number of magical beasts in front of them was too high, and the bodies of these few people all contained the scent of the spiritual spring tree, causing the magical beasts became extremely excited. Even Feng Yunjing was unable to make them fearfully withdraw. Chapter 351. Leaving the secret territory momentarily, the flesh flew in all directions. The bones rumbled and rolled around on the floor. In the hot and overgrown desert, the air reeked of blood for a short period of time. This caused the people to feel sick and heightened the magical beast's excitement. As time went by, Feng Yunjing's complexion became more and more unsightly. The spiritual power inside his body was beginning to run out. And the people around him, the disciples of Lu Li sect, were slowly dwindling. Some of them were devoured by the magical beasts and others were taken by Feng Lianying and Nie Jinshan to act as a shield. Even Feng Lianying and Nie Jinshan, who took so many of the disciples to use as scapegoats, were also becoming battered and exhausted. Above all were Feng Lianying's clothes, which were originally used to showcase her elegant figure. Although they did have some defensive attributes, how could they possibly be enough to endure against the magical beasts? By now her clothes had already been torn into shreds by the magical beasts, showing faint traces of her underwear. Most of the disciples of Lu Li sect had already been injured or dead, leaving almost none left. Feng Yunjing was stuck in combat with the rank 6 magical beast as the 3 rank 4 magical beasts pounced towards Feng Lianying. These several people's spiritual power was almost used up. Feng Lianying couldn't hold it anymore. She fell apart and shouted, "No! No! I don't want to die. Save me, ah? Nie Jinshan, don't you like me? Quick, save me." Saying this, she grabbed Nie Jinshan and pulled him in front of her. "Quick, block the attack for me." Nie Jinshan's eyes flashed with extreme fear and shock as he began to randomly swinging the long sword in his hand around. However, one magical beast still managed to bite down on his left hand. The only noise he heard was "ka-ka" as piercing bursts of pain stabbed him. Nie Jinshan could feel the bones on his left hand breaking apart. Meanwhile, another magical beast's bloody mouth came near his face. The fear of life or death scared Nie Jinshan into freezing up. He wanted to call for help, he wanted to escape. But his whole body seemed to be rigid. Aside from desperately waiting for his death, he could do nothing else. He thought about how he granted whatever was asked for from Feng Lianying over these past 10 years, how meek and subservient he was. Then he thought about how ruthlessly she just treated him. At this moment, any love Nye Jinshin held for Feng Lianying completely vanished. Except for undeserved desire, the only feelings he had left over were a heart full of hate and towards her. Ideas of trampling her filled his mind. It seemed like, soon, the lives of Feng Lianying and Nye Jinshin were about to end, and Feng Yunjing wasn't faring much better either. During this time, 1,000 pounds were hung by a thread. However, the scene before these three people's eyes suddenly changed. There was no longer the scorching hot temperatures, the magical beast's stinky breaths, dust-filled sky, and the foul smell that caused people to feel nauseous. Instead, it was replaced by the sweet smell of vegetation and a gentle breeze. Feng Yunjing and the others looked all around. They found out that they were unexpectedly in the middle of a valley. Moreover, the landform of this valley was awfully familiar. Wasn't this where these several people initially entered into Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory? What's the matter with this? How could they have suddenly appeared in the middle of a group of magical beasts? Then, in the blink of an eye, leave the secret territory? Feng Yunjing was both shocked and angry when he suddenly heard a shout. Ah! The rank 5 spirit crystal I just won, I was clearly holding it in my hand. Why is it missing now? I was clearly in Burning Heaven Realm just a moment ago, but in the blink of an eye I'm here now? The box full of spiritual fruits I harvested, its value was millions of crystal stones worth of treasures. With great difficulty I was able to defeat the guardian beast in order to pick these fruits. How are there none left now? In the end, who's done this? Why have we all been sent out? Chapter 352 Jade Body on Display. Don't tell me that something suddenly happened inside Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory, so it pushed us outside? Everybody's tongues were wagging, their faces were filled with shock. But nobody was able to figure out what had happened. Suddenly, someone's deep voice sounded out. I feel as if this situation seems to feel as if somebody has gained control over the secret dragon domain. What? How could this be? Legends say this secret territory is the almighty martial artist's. How could it be controlled by someone else? Feng Yunjing's face didn't appear nervous. He slowly took out a spirit pill and swallowed the replenishing spirit pill. But something gloomy and dark flashed by his eyes. Just now, he almost obtained the spiritual spring tree. But now, he failed through lack of a final effort and even lost dozens of Lu Li Sect's elite disciples. This time, the loss Feng family suffered could be said to be disastrous. Zijin Palace's inheritance wasn't obtained, in 100 Herb missed Feng Lianying lost popular feeling, and most importantly, they narrowly missed getting the spiritual spring tree. This time, he truly didn't know what to say when he returned. It was just, how could he always feel as if all these acts were deliberately planned against Feng family? Just like the situation now, where they were thrown out of the secret territory. The martial artists before them also lost the weapons they had been carrying in their hands. And their dozen or so people were thrown into the middle of a crowd of magical beasts. They experienced 9 deaths and were still alive, almost not making it out alive. Could it be that someone truly got control over the secret territory? If that's the case, who was able to obtain control over the Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory? Could it be Nan Gongyu? Impossible. Feng Yunjing's thoughts swept past this idea, immediately denying it. What type of place was Sealed Dragon territory? These martial artists in front of him only knew one and understood half, too. But he, who was the person who held great political power inside Feng family, was clear. This sacred place had existed for a millennium. Every big influential family on Miluo continent had been preparing for Secret Dragon Domain's secret territory to open for several hundred years. In the event that someone was able to get control over Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory, then how powerful was that person? If this type of person truly decided to oppose Feng family, then how could they, Feng family, possibly resist? Just as Feng Yunjing was just thinking about such a person, he heard a cry of surprise. In the blink of an eye, he saw Feng Lianying crawling up from the ground. It's unclear whether it was due to the fact that she was roasted by the hot temperatures inside the barren desert or if it was due to the situation with the magical beast scratching her. But when she stood up, the clothes on her body, unexpectedly, completely fell apart and turned into a puddle of powder. In a flash, Feng Lianing was no longer wearing any clothes, causing her jade-like body to be put on display. Originally, everyone was busy being angry over their lost weapons and asking why they had been sent out of the secret territory, so nobody paid attention to Feng Lianing. But everyone's gaze turned towards Feng Lianing after her shout just now. Immediately, there were gasps of surprise coming all around. No sooner after one subsides, another arises. Most of all the low-level male martial artists looked up and down at Feng Lianying's fruit-like body as their eyes filled with lust and excitement. Someone couldn't help themselves and whispered, 3. This couldn't be the Ice Lotus Fairy, right? I didn't expect her to be so passionate and bold, not even wearing clothes in front of all these martial artists. Clicking their tongue, look at this soft and tender flesh. Pampered girls raised by influential families really aren't the same. If I can get on intimate terms with this person, I would willingly die. How could Feng Lianing ever imagine that after struggling to escape from that beast, going back would also welcome such humiliation? For a moment, her beautiful face was snow white and her two hands were clenched together, hugging her shivering body. She wanted to take out a new set of clothes from her storage ring but was unable to because her spiritual power was all used up. She wouldn't be able to take anything out for a while. 9 deaths and were still alive. They were only narrowly able to escape. 2 knew one and understood half. Feng Yunjing is saying these people are ignorant. 3 a term used to express dismay, exasperation, or surprise. Chapter 353. Completely ruined. Immediately, her pair of beautiful eyes filled with tears. It would appear to be as if I saw a white lotus, but the male martial artists all began to feel sorry and take pity on her. But there were also female martial artists who disapproved of her attitude, coldly standing to the side and heatedly mocking her. Truly shameless. Obviously you're wanton, yet you're still sitting here putting out a pitiful appearance. Exactly, if I was her, I would have been ashamed to even see people. Unexpectedly, she puts on a pitiful face trying to get me to feel sorry for her. What Ice Lotus Fairy? All I see is a white lotus flower putting on an act of flirtatious behavior. Feng Lianing just got up before realizing how awful her current situation was. Originally, she wanted to put on a weak, couldn't-do-harmed expression in order to evoke some sympathy. But now, having heard the comments of these women, her face twisted and the shame in her eyes completely changed to bitter hatred. In the end, who was it who harmed Feng family? Who caused Feng Lianing to make such a fool of herself? The painstaking effort she exerted to build up her image these past few years, her blissful fated marriage. It was all ruined in these short few days, completely ruined. No matter who caused her to be so humiliated today, she wanted to put it all on Shiyu, that slut. She definitely won't let go of that slut. There will be a day when she kills that slut and leaves her without a burial site. Under other people's loathing, wanton, passionate, or criticizing gazes, Feng Lianying's body had almost no clothing to cover herself and felt as if there were brambles and thorns on her back. Unfortunately, she completely wasted her spiritual power. She couldn't even take out one piece of clothing. Her eyes were reddened with tears. Suddenly, a warm piece of clothing was draped over her, covering her body. Feng Lianing turned her head around and saw Nie Jinshan's deeply concerned gaze. Lianing Mimi, are you okay? Those magical beasts from before didn't hurt you, right? Feng Lianing stared blankly, recalling her previous actions inside the group of magical beasts, how she pulled Nie Jinshan in front of her to act as her shield and suddenly felt as if she had a bit of a guilty conscience. Nie Jinshan seemed to have not noticed her emotions, softly saying, "If Lianing Mimi doesn't take offense, she can wear my clothing." At first, Feng Lianing was embarrassed. But after raising her head up and seeing Nie Jinshan's tender and infatuated gaze, she stood up, feeling proud and arrogant again. Nie Jinshan was the dog that stuck to her side. No matter how many times she tossed him around or humiliated, he would never betray her. Although she didn't care much for this dog continually pursued her. This greatly satisfied her vanity. Feng Lianying was too busy feeling proud of herself and didn't notice Nie Jinshin bowing his head down to cover the cold look flitting through his eyes. Just as Feng Lianying put on Nie Jinshin's clothes, Feng Yunjing coldly smiled. Let's go. We'll return to Feng family first before discussing. They must go back as soon as possible and report today's matter to their elders. As for Feng Lianying, that stupid woman who lost face today, Feng Yunjing already concocted a plan to completely abandon this waste. Watching as Feng Lianying and Feng Yunjing prepared to leave, the people who were previously too scared to speak out in front of Feng family's great prestige suddenly shouted out. The scene regarding Feng family's eldest daughter, the Ice Lotus Fairy, was quickly spread through word of mouth. Everybody repeated over and over again how Feng Lianying's body was on display after everyone left the secret territory. By the next day, the news was popular gossip alongside news of Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory. In Yanjing City, inside all the great streets and alleys, everybody knew this information. Brambles and thorns on her back. She felt uneasy and nervous. Great streets and alleys everywhere in the city. Chapter 354. Repaying double the amount. Watching as the three figures vanished, the little golden dragon standing by Hushi gloomily said, "Such a pity. If this time when the secret territory's control is being handed over was longer, then those three people would have been torn apart by the magical beasts." Contrary to one might think, Hushi didn't seem to have any big reaction. She was standing to the side, looking over all the treasures she plundered today, faintly saying, "Feng Yunjing is at nascent soul stage. If his life was truly in danger, the magical beasts may not be able to do much damage to him. In fact, he may even do damage to the secret territory instead. You should have also seen the chilliness in Nie Jinshin's eyes. Looks like he won't be protecting his Ice Lotus Fairy with all his heart anymore." To add on to the fact the shame Feng Lianying just lost in front of everyone, it won't be long before everyone knows about what happened here. Hehe. Inside Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory control room, Hushi could not only control every corner inside the secret territory, she could clearly see about 10 kilometers outside as well. In other words, even if she didn't leave the secret territory, the entire Tsung Mountain was under her control as well. Therefore, even though Feng Lianying and the other martial artists were kicked out of the secret territory, Hushi could still clearly see all of their actions. Hushi's mouth lifted up into an unfeeling smile, and in passing she waved her hand, taking the treasured items she just earned into her space. Unhurriedly she said, "Feng Lianying, this vicious and merciless White Lotus. First she hurt you and Dan Dan, then she continuously plots against me, trying to kill me. How could she die so easily to those magical beasts? Isn't that too convenient for her? Rest assured Long One, this woman hurt you and Dan Dan. There will definitely be a day when she repays you double the amount." After Heshi's words, she listened to the little divine dragon getting fired up. He really was worthy of being her family's boss. Although his strength wasn't profound yet, his domineering attitude was really matchless. It was until his last few words that caused Heshi's smile to come crashing down. "Don't call me Long, it's not imposing enough. I'm the magnificent golden dragon. How can I be called such a wet behind the ears name?" Heshi chuckled. "This is the nickname Dan Dan gave you. If you want to protest, go find Dan Dan. But I'll warn you, if you cause Dan Dan to cry, my family's Little Purple won't let you get away with it." Little Purple is precisely the purple abyss vine. After this guy and Dan Dan ate all those magical plants, they developed a deep foodie friendship. Adding to the fact was that Dan Dan was especially clever and obedient. Every day he would call Little Purple Anti-Purple Abyss, causing the Purple Abyss vine to treat Dan Dan even more generously than her, the master. The little divine dragon's face immediately came crashing down. He definitely wasn't scared of Dan Dan. But when he thought about that adorable little pink pig's weeping appearance, the little divine dragon felt as if all the scales on his body hurt. Especially twitchy, especially unable to endure. Heshi no longer paid any mind to this confused little guy. She tilted her head up, directing her attention to the top of the room. Actually, this secret room was not just a singular room, but the basement of a palace. After gaining control of the secret territory, Hushi found that the ceiling in this room was completely clear. Looking up, she could see what appeared to be the site of a dazzling palace. Long, this is a nickname of sorts for the little divine dragon. Long means dragon. 2, wet behind the ears, immature and unexperienced. Chapter 355 Overcoming Catastrophe. To ascend heavenwards from here, one could see the faint shadow of a flying cyan sword. The little golden dragon followed Heshi's gaze and looked at the flying cyan sword. His face couldn't help but be filled with a longing expression. That's the heart of sealed dragon domain. It's also the most precious item inside the entirety of secret territory, sealed dragon sword. That year, when my family's master flew upwards, he used this exact spirit weapon. At that time on Miluo continent, my master killed gods if gods blocked and killed Buddhas if Buddhas blocked. Except for those old fellows who were on the same level as master, other people couldn't even see master's back. And I am one of master's spirit pets. How powerful is that? Nobody is my rival. But afterward, when master overcame catastrophe and ascended heavenwards, too, Qing Sha and I failed and were unable to follow master. Spirit beast Qing Sha was completely extinguished. All that's left is a broken strand of primordial spirit that's left by the owner inside the secret territory. But I'm better than Qing Sha, that idiot. Although I was also extinguished, the dragon race has the ability to reincarnate. We can reincarnate if we give up on our cultivation and start fresh. So, master left sealed dragon domain to me and left the sealed dragon sword on me, so it wouldn't fall apart, letting me wait for a fated person to come in and break the seal so that I may see the light again. However, although the seal has been removed and I can cultivate again, I can't see my master ever again in this lifetime. Flying beyond the boundaries? Heshi's eyes brightened up and her lips curled up into a fighting spirit smile. Ever since she came to this strange world, she never thought about stopping her steps. Becoming stronger until she can't be restricted or suppressed again. Until her 2 eyes can look over the whole world and her feet can walk over every inch of land. Looking at the little golden dragon's sadness, Heshi smiled proudly. Isn't it just ascending upwards after overcoming catastrophe? After being defeated once, what are you afraid of? If you follow me, there will surely be a time when you can attempt to overcome catastrophe and ascend heavenwards again. When the time comes, are you scared you won't be able to find your previous master? The little golden dragon was stunned. It wanted to ridicule this woman overestimating her capabilities. One needed to at least be at meridian stage to overcome catastrophe and ascend heavenwards. This was such a distant matter, saying these words now, it was just indulging in one's fantasies. But seeing Heshi's brilliant and bright eyes, the little golden dragon suddenly felt as if it was unable to refute her words. It always felt as if, no matter what formidable task this girl in front of it said, she seemed to always be able to accomplish it. Heshi no longer talked and pitifully looked towards the sealed dragon sword. Because the level of the sealed dragon domain's secret territory was too high, she was unable to access some places, even though she was now in control of the secret territory. For example, the sealed dragon sword inside the palace's main hall. At the very least, she needed to be gold core stage in order to bypass the restriction. Otherwise, if you are able to hold the sword but you hurt all sides, just think about it. But it's just wishful thinking, nothing more. If she was truly able to take out the sealed dragon sword, the little golden dragon was afraid that she would be chased by people everywhere. After finishing dealing with the secret territory's matters and sending the little golden dragon into her space, Heshi went back and appeared in front of Nangongyu. Shir. Upon seeing Heshi, Nangongyu firmly carried her. His face was full of anxiousness. Did you get hurt? Sensing Nangongyu's anger and concern, Heshi was distracted. Immediately, she softly said, "Didn't I leave you a slip of paper saying that I was fine? 1. Killed gods if gods blocked and killed Buddhas if Buddhas blocked, to overcome every obstacle. 2. Overcoming catastrophe to ascend heavenwards. After overcoming some calamity, one will become a god. Chapter 356. Are you willing to marry me? After Nan Gongyu held on to her for a moment, he slowly loosened his grip on her. Pinching her nose and faking anger, he said, "You still dare to talk? You left only a slip of paper with no trace of you around. How was I supposed to know if you were coerced into doing that? Do you still say that I shouldn't have worried?" He lowly coughed twice. She was rarely embarrassed. But at that time she wanted to let Feng Lianying and Feng Yunjing experience some unluckiness. Momentarily, she was up to her ears in work. So, she only had time to hurriedly leave a slip of paper for Nan Gongyu and the rest of them. At the time, she didn't think too much of it. Wu Yu and Gu Lu Feng weren't as anxious as Nan Gongyu, but when they saw that He returned safe and sound, they were also quite happy. But thinking about how those several people inexplicably ended up outside the secret territory, Wu Yu couldn't help but ask, "It's very strange. With sealed dragon domain's secret territory being so big, unless someone touched the control core, how could everyone has been sent out? Don't tell me that the secret territory encountered some sort of problem? Unless someone obtained the sealed dragon sword?" As everyone knows, sealed dragon domain was used to hold the sealed dragon sword. If someone was able to get the sword, then secret territory's core control would certainly open. He rubbed her nose and didn't dare to say any more. The little golden dragon had said that before she could hold the sealed dragon sword, she must not let anyone know she was the owner of the secret territory. This included even the people closest to her. Otherwise, if someone killed her, the secret territory would collapse and the little golden dragon would experience a violent death. Nan Gongyu looked at the deep burning in He's eyes. He seemed to have finally guessed what was going on. But instead of saying anything, he rubbed the top of He's head, softly saying, "Sheer, do you want to come back to Hell King Manor with me?" He gloomily shook her head. "Why do you want me to follow you back to Hell King Manor? I still have to settle some matters inside Song Mountain. Once I finish dealing with them, I'll return to my own courtyard." Unexpectedly, Nan Gongyu didn't continue to insist. Nodding his head, something gloomy flashed in his eyes. "You returning to your own courtyard is good too. I'll let Wu Xen follow you, to protect you." Just as He was about to retort, Nan Gongyu extended his hand out to softly caress her warm cheek, saying with a gentle and low voice, "During this time, I won't be able to come find you. You have to obediently take good care of yourself and wait for me to come back, eh?" He unhappily slapped his hand away. Unexpectedly, when she slapped his hand, her hand landed on top of his. Unlike previous times, Nan Gongyu extended his other hand and brought her into his embrace. His deep voice, which faintly seemed to hold weakness and praying, sounded in her ears. "Sheer, in the event that everything is over, are you willing to marry me?" He was stunned. It seemed as if something was stuck in her throat, leaving her speechless. He vaguely knew that Nan Gongyu needed to attend to a very important and dangerous matter. So the words he spoke just now seemed to sound like his last dying words. He deliberately wanted to question what he was going to do. But seeing Nan Gongyu's eyes filled with stars and burning, He swallowed any words she wanted to say. He rolled around a small storage ring on her palm. Her complexion was indifferent and the words she spoke held even less emotions. "I'm replying no to your question. After all, when you go there, only God knows if you'll ever reappear in front of my face again." It wasn't even a moment later when she threw the storage ring onto Nan Gongyu's body, indifferently saying, "Everything inside here is for you. I believe that these things will be helpful for you, no matter what you're doing." Up to her ears in work, she was so busy, everything basically slipped out of her mind or she was too busy to do anything else. Same use as okay. Chapter 357. Wait for me to come back. Nan Gongyu was startled. He looked around inside the storage ring. His eyes quickly showed astonishment. The ring was filled full of magic weapons and spirit fruits that were hard to estimate the worth of. By taking just a bite out of those spirit fruits, one would completely replenish their spirit energy. Additionally, there were also sacred grade fighting pills called Lotus Mark Immortality Peach. In Miluo continent, one of these pills could be estimated to be worth a small city. But Heshi gave him 20 of them. So much so that inside the pile of magic weapons, there was a flying purple sword. Nangong Yu's expression was extremely moved. The flying sword appeared in his hand. It quickly released the sound of an imperial chant. This is... Heshi pursued her lips. This isn't the real sealed dragon sword, it's a fake the real owner made. But its power is 50% of the original sword. I can't use it at my current strength, so it's better to give it to you. This fake sealed dragon sword was originally inside the desolate desert realm. It was there that Heshi noticed its power was formidable. No magical creature dared to enter within 10 li of it. So, she took it out. It was only after she took out the fake that she gloomily discovered she couldn't use it. Forget about it, she can't use the real sealed dragon sword. But now, she can't even use the fake one. She can only stare at it, too depressing. Looks like the most important thing to do now is increase her strength. Nangong Yu dazedly stared at the long sword in his hand. Nangong Yu's eyes glittered with tears. Heshi looked at Nangong Yu, who seemed to have turned stupid. She thought he couldn't look up to this sealed dragon sword and wanted to say something. But before she could, Nangong Yu suddenly extended his hand out and brought her into his embrace. Hugging her closely, he seemed to want to embed her into his flesh and blood. In my life, I've always been fighting alone from the beginning. When I grew up, I blocked wind and covered rain for others. You are the person I wish to protect the most in this life. But you're also the first one that I can't shield under my wing. Sheer, wait for me to come back. You can't become fond of other men, you can't look at other men, and you can't let yourself be hurt. During the first half of Nangong Yu's words, Heshi smiled and felt moved. But after hearing his last sentence, she couldn't help but roll her eyes. Pushing him away, she said, "Are you finished with your, this can't do, and that can't do?" This time, Nangong Yu didn't continue speaking. He deeply stared at Heshi, seemingly trying to engrave her image into his mind. Then he quickly turned and left. Qing Long and Wu Yu quickly followed Nangong Yu, walking along beside him. They saw him tightly biting his jaw and push his heart down. Master didn't tell Wang Fei the matter they were dealing with this time was to deal with the Feng family at a date earlier than what was originally planned. And Feng family not only had the support of Lu Li sect and the foundation of a millennium, they also had Feng family's scary influence. It could be said that in terms of going against Feng family this time, Hell King Manor didn't have much odds of success. But Master couldn't wait to abolish Feng family. He couldn't wait to get rid of Feng Yunjing and Feng Lianying, those two people who wished to bring harm to Wang Fei. Even more so, he couldn't wait to impressively marry Wang Fei through the door. Watching Nangong Yu and the others leaving, Heshi's heart gave birth to indescribable sorrow. But she quickly threw this sorrow to the back of her mind. Turning around, she walked towards Gu Lufeng, Zhou Yenin and Guidao. Gu Lufeng was distracted. He couldn't help but keep thinking of the intimate moment Heshi and Nangong Yu just shared. Heshi had a delicate face, long eyelashes that slightly trembled, bright eyes and white teeth. So much so that compared to Nailin Yenming, the women in the drawing, to some degree she was more elegant. Chapter 358. Returning home. The more Gu Lufeng imagined Heshi as a woman, the more his heart swayed and the face behind his mask was flushed. But quickly, he came back and saw Heshi's concentrated expression as she used a needle on Guidao. The gentleness in his heart scattered and made way for appreciation and respect. Shiyu was clearly a male. Furthermore, he was a highly skilled genius doctor and he was his close friend. How could he, Gu Lufeng, think of him, Heshi/Shiyu, with such thoughts? Gu Lufeng suddenly felt ashamed. Lowering his head, he didn't dare to look at Heshi face to face. Zhou Yenin thought this his family's master was too embarrassed to ask Heshi, but at this moment he couldn't deal with that. Walking 2 steps forward, he asked, "Shigongzi, that day, when we were inside Zijin Palace Hall, you asked why we would risk our lives to save you." Heshi nodded her head. "You want to ask me to save Gu Liufeng's mother?" "Precisely." Hearing what was said, Zhou Yenin felt overjoyed at the good news. At once, he asked, "My family's master's mother has been bedridden for many years. No matter how many genius doctors we invited, it was no help. We're asking genius Dr. Shi to help now. If you want me to save people, that's fine. He nodded her head without hesitation. But I'm also not some god. I can't possibly cure every single sickness. Additionally, I have some matters to settle these few days. Wait a bit, I'll go to Xingde Hall to look for you. At that time, you can go bring me to look at the patient. At first, Zhou Yan'an's face seemed to be staring blankly. Following that, his eyes turned red. Pu Tong sounded as he kneeled down on the floor. I'll bring my family's master to thank genius Dr. Shi, who granted us such a huge favor. Gu Lufeng cleared his hand and came over. He pulled the person up from the floor. Facing He, he faintly smiled. Shiyu, I'll wait for you. Saying this, he didn't bother to linger anymore, and without the slightest hesitation, he turned around and walked away. But nobody discovered the romantic love affair in his naturally charming pair of eyes. Now, a dedication and decisiveness settled in his eyes. Although Shiyu denied him, Gu Lufeng decided that if Shiyu was truly able to save his mom, then his life would be Shiyu's. For Shiyu, he wouldn't hesitate to go through water and tread on fire. After sending Nangong Yu and Gu Lufeng, He returned to the secret territory and activated the concealing array. When Sealed Dragon Domain's concealing array was active, even nascent soul stage martial artists wouldn't be able to discover the secret territory's location. Forget about trying to enter it. From now on, Song Mountain and Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory was now He's private property. She could open up a few locations inside the secret territory to use as a training ground for her family's people. If there was any danger, she could allow Wet Nurse Chen and the others to enter the secret territory. It really could be said that this was the perfect place to hide and to attack. After finishing with her matters regarding the secret territory, He no longer hesitated. She quickly flew towards B Courtyard. At this moment, her heart gave birth to a sudden feeling of guilt. In front of her eyes, she could practically see Xiao Li's lovable and silly smile, Wet Nurse Chen's deeply concerned complexion, and her family's people's adoring and trust-filled eyes. In her previous life, she was just a person. Regardless of how long she left for and no matter where she lived, she always returned to an empty house. She has never been able to call a place home. But in this life, it's different. Inside B Courtyard, there's always people waiting for her, looking forward to her. There will always be a room that's lit up for her, providing her warmth. This is home. With this time's gains, she had confidence that Wet Nurse Chen and everyone else could become stronger. It would also be able to provide for good days ahead for them. Chapter 359 Bloody Slaughterhouse. He descended onto a lawn nearby B Courtyard. Just as she was about to go near it, her complexion suddenly changed. Originally, B Courtyard was hidden by an array. But now, it completely disappeared. The wind blew the pungent smell of blood from inside the courtyard. He's heart sunk a little bit. In an instant, her figure appeared inside the courtyard. Not even a moment later, an even heavier smell of blood assaulted one's noses. The blood on the floor seemed to resemble a red lotus blooming, suddenly causing He's eyes to redden. He stumbled. She was almost unable to keep standing. Just now, she had pictured this warm, peaceful and harmonious scene. But now, it had transformed into a twisted and sinister scene with corpses and a bloody slaughterhouse. The inside of B Courtyard was in disorder. It was full of corpses. Inside the manor lay a servant girl, Xiao Si, and the low-level martial artists she had been given control over from Nalan family. Every one of them died with eyes filled with fright. Their eyes were wide open. They were dead but wouldn't close their eyes, too. And in the center of B Courtyard, Wet Nurse Chen's body had been carelessly thrown onto the ice-cold floor. Just like the others, her eyes were wide open. There was a gaping hole in her chest and her internal organs were on the ground, smashed by someone's foot. Wet Nurse Chen's eyes had unwillingness and tears of blood, flowing out. As if she had been shouting to be able to see her family's young lady when she was at death's doorstep. However, her breath had long since been cut off and any sign of life had disappeared. Even if He had better medical skills, It's impossible to revive a dead person. Heshi slowly walked up to wet Nurse Chen. Crouching down next to her, she closed the eyes that were filled with remaining grievances. Softly saying, "Wet nurse, Heshi has come back. Forgive me, Heshi came back late." A flicker of light passed through her eyes, but it quickly changed into coldness that resembled the Azura from hell and killing intent. Her lowered voice was clear and pleasant to listen to, but it also carried a coldness that had people's hairs standing on end. "Wet nurse, you can rest assured. I'll definitely make the people who did harm to you repay you 100,000 times. Wet nurse, when you've arrived on the Yellow Springs, the road, you must walk slowly so you may see their headless bodies, their expressions seen there at the end, oh." After she finished speaking these few words, little by little, she gently took wet Nurse Chen's internal organs and reinserted them into her stomach. Then she took out a silver sewing needle. Her hands were quick and moved as if they were in a dance, sewing back the cut-open stomach as if it hadn't been damaged before. The elegant youth's expression was distinctly cold, and the corner of her mouth even held a sneer. She sat on the floor, in between the blood, bodies, and wreckage. Her 2 hands were covered in blood. But her finger, which was well-proportioned and seemed to be carved from jade, held a needle and seemed to be a dancing as if it was a fantasy. She resembled a demon who had walked out of hell. So beautiful, so brilliant, but also so frightening, allowing people's hairs to stand on end. Wu Exin, who had received an order from his master, hurried over to the courtyard at this time and saw this precise scene in front of his eyes. Even Wu Exin, whose heart was cold and had seen the whole world, held his breath from intimidation. Previously, Wu Exin wasn't fond of Heshi. Although Heshi saved Master's life, it was also because Heshi got hurt that Master got caught up in that crisis. So much so that Master, in order to save her, wasted the blood essence. And most importantly, previously Master had always been cold and formidable, he never had a weakness before. But when Heshi appeared, Master suddenly had the ordinary person's 4 human emotions, 5, and a weakness. And this woman named Nalan Heshi is delicate, in such a way that it's inconvenient, causing Master to have to constantly worry over and protect her. 1. Resemble a red lotus blooming. I believe this means that the blood was spreading. 2. Dead but wouldn't close their eyes. They died with grievances. 3. Tears of blood, a symbol of extreme suffering. 4. Yellow Springs, the underworld in Chinese mythology. 5. 4 human emotions, happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy. Chapter 360. Tearing into pieces. If this continued on, one day, this weakness will become Master's fatal crisis. Therefore, Wu Exin had been scheming to secretly get rid of Heshi, this hindrance of a woman. He made sure to take pains to ensure Master wouldn't suspect anything. Wu Exin had recently just broken through nascent soul stage, and although his foundation still wasn't completely stable, but in Miluo continent, there were few people who had seen him and didn't tremble in fear. This allowed him to injure people as he wished. Yet she was merely an insignificant girl at just foundation establishment stage who, unexpectedly, caused him to feel afraid. Is this woman truly ordinary and weak? After Wu Exin entered the courtyard, this was his first thought. Soon after, he took note of the misery-filled courtyard and the bloody slaughterhouse-like scene. His complexion couldn't help but drop. Initially, before he had entered Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory, Nangong Yu had told Bai Hu and him to guard the courtyard's surroundings and to protect Nalan Heshi. However, later when Heshi, by an accident arising from many causes, also entered the Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory, they lost future Wang Fei's courtyard. So naturally, if they had to say it, protecting it no longer held value. To add on to the fact, they received information regarding that secret. So, they quickly threw the courtyard and the people inside the courtyard to the back of their minds. In any event, Wu Exin never thought that this moment of ignorance would cause Heshi's servants and subordinates to be massacred. Inside Yanjing City, it's possible to be able to find Heshi's address. There were few people who didn't know that she was Hell King Manor's people and under their protection. Just who ate a bear's heart and the leopard's guts. Unexpectedly, someone dared to put their hand to Hell King Manor's future Wang Fei. At this moment, He had already finished sewing together wet Nurse Chen's body. Wu Xian walked a few steps forward. Wang Fei, this subordinate has come under master's order to protect you. He paid no attention to him. She respectfully shifted wet Nurse Chen's body to a corner and lightly flattened out a corner of her jacket, softly saying, "Wet nurse, wait here for a moment for me." After saying that, she no longer hesitated and stood up. Her figure disappeared from the place she originally stood at and began to carefully check every inch and corner inside the courtyard. She had yet to see Shi Jia and everyone else or Shaoli. Just after she passed through the corridor and into the back garden, He's eyes suddenly contracted. She only saw the back garden's floors were also filled with blood and corpses were strewn about, in disorder. But these corpses, in comparison to the ones in the front yard, met an even crueler and miserable end. Some bodies had their hands chopped off, some had the bones in all 4 limbs of their bodies crushed, and others met the same fate as wet Nurse Chen. They had their internal organs spilled out of a hole in their stomachs. Their intestines were purposefully taken out and they didn't die immediately. They had to endure a slow and painful death. These people were the subordinates He meticulously trained, Shi Jia, Shi Bing, Shi Gui. He looked at the scene in front of her eyes. Her expression was calm, as if she held no emotions. But even she didn't notice that her fist was clenched, as if she wanted to tear something to pieces. She crouched down, softly using her hand to support Shi Jia's dead body. She wanted to sew back his hands and feet that had been chopped off. But just as she supported his body, her movements stopped. Although it was very, very weak, her fingertips felt the faint pulse of a heartbeat. A bright light shone in He's eyes. She didn't hesitate and quickly took out silver needles from her space. One after another, she inserted them into the holes in Shi Jia. After being completely ignored by He, Wu Xian felt unsatisfied. But thinking about the courtyard's miserable state, he still slowly followed behind He. If of course not. Our He has MC plot armor. Chapter 361. Putting together corpses, but seeing the scene in front of his eyes, he became stupefied. Unexpectedly, He was sticking needles into the corpse. And furthermore, she was also bringing the chopped-off hands and feet over. Once again, through flying needle and running seam, she sewed together the 4 limbs again. Wu Xian admitted that this girl's appearance when she was concentrating on stitching was so pure and holy, so awe-inspiring. As if she was set high up, too, and was a god who was able to decide whether or not someone lives or dies. After she sewed Shi Jia's 4 limbs back on his body, except for a light scar, you surprisingly couldn't see that the 4 limbs had previously been chopped off. But this couldn't be changed. Nalan He already experienced too much stimulant ion and she was already close to collapsing. If not, how could any regular person be able to treat the dead bodies and even take the chopped off hands and feet? To be able to cautiously and solemnly sew them back on. The most frightening fact was that after He finished sewing Shi Jia, she didn't stop there. She took the other 9 corpses and moved them to a clean corner. Afterward, one by one she began to use acupuncture and then she began to treat their 1,000 sore and 100 whole, 3 bodies. After she finished sewing together the holes in the 9th body, Wu Xian finally couldn't help but walk a few steps forward. He quietly said, "Wang Fei, these people are already dead. Please restrain your grief and accept fate." The movement of the needle in He's hand didn't stop, but her long eyelashes lifted up and looked towards Wu Xian's confused face. The haughty expression his eyes looked at her, clearly looking at her as if she was someone with a mental disorder. He didn't pay any mind to him. After quickly treating the injuries on all the bodies, she took out a Zijin medicine cauldron from her space. When the Zijin medicine cauldron just appeared, it was just the size of a fist. But by the time it touched the ground, it quickly became bigger and bigger. In the blink of an eye, it became a huge stove that could accommodate dozens of people. He took diluted spiritual spring water and generously poured it into the stove. It wasn't until it was more than half full that she stopped pouring it in. She took a glance at the dumbstruck Xian and slowly said, "If you have free time when you stand to the side, then use spiritual fire to add heat to the stove." Wu Xian stared blankly. Soon after, he felt some anger from shame. He was a grand nascent soul stage martial artist. But now this woman, to one's surprise, seemed to be ordering him about like she would to a little boy servant. Besides, these peoples have long since stopped breathing. Their whole body didn't show any signs of spiritual energy and life. This woman, repeatedly doing this, has she treating the corpses one by one, what is her end goal? Wu Xian forcibly resisted the urge to slap this woman. He coldly said, me calling you Wang Fei is me giving master face. It's best if you don't want a foot after winning an inch, for these people have clearly already died. You still need me to remind you several times? Wu Xian didn't get to finish speaking when suddenly the wing of his nose, 5, shrunk and his eyes looked unbelieving. His body was as straight as a rock, his whole body didn't dare to move. His shocked gaze stared at the delicate complexion of the nearby girl. Heshi's hand held a delicate-seeming dagger. The dagger's knife blade emitted a strange, greenish-blue, cold light. At this moment, the dagger sat firmly against his neck. Seemingly, if she drew it down just a little bit more, it would cut open his flesh and allow the poison to seep inside him. Shock couldn't be used to describe Wu Xian's current mood right now. Although, just now, he wasn't completely alert and didn't have a spiritual cover. But he was still a nascent soul stage martial artist, a very minor foundation establishment stage martial artist. Wanting to attack him would be like a joke from a fantasy story. But unexpectedly, just now he didn't even see Heshi move. So much so that he didn't even know how she concealed her breath and figure before appearing in front of him. 1. Flying needle and running seam, skillful needlework. 2. Set high up, she's aloof and remote. 3. Thousand sore and 100 whole bodies, their bodies were riddled with injuries. 4. 1 a foot after winning an inch, to not be satisfied with small gains. A similar saying would be wanting a mile after getting an inch. 5. Wing of his nose, the ala of the nose, wing of the nose, is the lower lateral surface of the external nose. Chapter 362 Alive? See, the little girl's figure was much shorter, smaller, and more delicate when compared to his. At this moment, she was holding a dagger. Raising her head to look at him, her eyes were filled with expressions of cruelty, coldness, and determination. As if he was the moles, crickets, and ants, one, being slaughtered according to her wishes. His ears transmitted a pleasant, sweet-sounding voice that also held the coldness that a demon from hell possessed. I don't care who you are, my mood is extremely unwell right now. So it's best if you don't irritate me. Furthermore, don't mention the character dead at the end. Otherwise, I can't guarantee what actions I may take. Finished speaking, she slowly withdrew her dagger. Taking a step back, she unhurriedly said, either add heat or get lost and don't let me see you. By the time Wu Xian recovered his expression, he already gave up a big strand of his spiritual fire. That Zijin medicine cauldron had already been warmed up until it was scathing. Wu Xian was suddenly annoyed. He had always been the most level-headed and he was able to control his emotions the best. But, unexpectedly, at this moment he had an urge to find things to ruthlessly to smash. He was a grand nascent soul stage martial artist. Surprisingly, he was threatened by a weak little girl. Furthermore, he was so intimidated by the threat that he became absent-minded and he obediently heated the water for her. To have Wu Xian, a nascent soul stage martial artist, boil water, if this matter was spread out, the entire cultivation world would laugh at him for a whole year. Heshi no longer bothered to ensure that Wu Xian continued to heat up the Zijin medicine cauldron. At this moment, she was so busy her feet didn't touch the ground. She continuously took out spiritual pills from her space, throwing them into the cauldron afterward. It was only until the originally clear and sweet-smelling spiritual spring water changed into an ashy black that caused people to feel fear. Heshi then proceeded to take Shijia along with everyone else and one by one, she threw them into the cauldron. Under the heat of Wu Xian's spiritual flame, the medicinal juice inside the medicine cauldron slowly came to a boil. The medicinal juice seemed to act as if it had its own life, slowly climbing onto Shijia and everyone else's bodies. The foam wiggled and rolled around, seeping into the recently sewn-together wounds. This scene caused Wu Xian's hairs to stand on end. He nearly began to question whether or not this woman learned witchcraft. But suddenly, someone let out a faint moan from inside the medicine cauldron. A man leaning on the side of the cauldron slowly opened his eyes. Wu Xian's eyes were wide open. He simply didn't dare to believe what he was seeing. Alive? Alive? The person who had just had all 4 of his limbs chopped off, his blood was spilled all over the floor, and he no longer possessed any signs of life or breathing. Unexpectedly, this man was alive. How could this be? In this world, how could there be such a godly medical technique? Although everyone says a godly doctor could give life to a dead person, but if someone truly wanted to resurrect a dead person, that was an impossible feat. Otherwise, wouldn't this world be a mess by now? But, at this moment in front of his eyes, this merely foundation establishment stage woman accomplished this feat. She allowed a dead person to come to life again. Moreover, as time went on, more and more people let out faint groaning sounds. Although their breathing was still weak, it could still be considered the breathing of a person that was living and not a puppet created through witchcraft. Wu Xian's face was filled with shock. The gaze that looked upon Heshi didn't contain the original contempt and indifference. All that was left over was respect. A woman who could rob lives, whether dead or alive, from the 6 realms of samsaric existence, too. This sort of medical expertise, didn't that mean the major poisons on Master's body could be cured by her? Thinking up to here, Wu Xian's heart was in turmoil. His attitude towards Heshi automatically became more respectful. The people who were inside the medicine cauldron had just slowly opened their eyes. When they saw Heshi, they couldn't help but cry out in surprise. Miss. Chapter 363. Who is it? They were able to feel an ache in their body and their hearts beating in their chest. Seeing that they were still alive, many people couldn't help but begin crying. When Shijia saw Heshi, he felt ashamed of himself. Such a large man cried until his eyes turned red. Miss, forgive us. It's us that's useless. We were unable to protect Wet Nurse Chen and Shaoli well enough. Thinking about how Wet Nurse Chen was unable to be revived, sorrow flashed through Heshi's eyes. Her ears seemed to still hear Wet Nurse Chen's deeply concerned and nagging voice. But she has already forever lost this warmth. Taking a deep breath, Heshi masked the sadness on her face and softly said, "You've already done very well. As far as I'm concerned, as long as you're able to live on, then you've already done very well." After Heshi said these words, the remaining large guys that were holding back tears couldn't help but cover their faces and began to boo-hoo, and cry. It was Miss that gave them a completely new life, allowed them to cultivate, and allowed them to experience a much easier and cozier life when compared to normal martial artists. Miss gave them so much, but they had never done anything for Mississippi. Now, they couldn't even properly protect the tiny bee courtyard. Wet Nurse Chen and Shaoli, wastes like them deserve to die. But, not only did Miss not scold them, she also tried her hardest to bring them back from death's abyss and said that all they needed to do was continue staying alive. This great favor, this type of trust, a torn body and crushed bones, too, wouldn't be enough to repay it. Even repaying generation after generation wouldn't be enough. Seeing this group of large, tough men crying like this, Heshi couldn't help but let out a sigh. Alright, stop crying first. Tell me, who was reckless enough to attack this place? And where is Shaoli? At once, Shijia said, we also don't know who attacked this place. But they kept telling us to hand over Shiyu, godly Dr. Shi. All along, Shaoli Guneng was protecting Wet Nurse Chen. We wanted to let Wet Nurse Chen and Shaoli leave first, but our strength was not equal to theirs. Shijia hadn't finished speaking before Zhang San's weak voice sounded out. Miss, I heard that Shaoli was taken away. They also said they wanted to leave a brief note in the central room, telling you to bring some extinct skill to bring the person back. Shijia and everyone else's injuries were extremely serious. Against all common sense, they were able to continue living on because Heshi had previously given a body-strengthening pill for them to eat. So, by the time Heshi came to treat them, she was able to retain their lives. Everyone else in B courtyard died. Only Zheng San was able to preserve his life. Zhang San, this fellow, had always been very astute. After receiving an attack, he took some corpses to cover his body with and pretended to be dead. Only by doing so was he able to avoid a fatal hit. Not only that, he was also able to overhear the group of people's conversation. Zhang San paused, his pale face coughed a few times before continuing. "Miss, no matter what, you must not go to that place. I heard them say that they already set up a trap. They're just waiting for you to go walk right into it. Furthermore, and inside that group of people, there were some individuals I felt were familiar. Just now I recalled who they were." Heshi lowered her voice. "Who is it?" She was very curious as to who was sick of living. Who was it that wanted to go take a walk inside Yama's palace hall? Zheng San coughed twice again. The hesitation in his eyes changed into affirmation. It was Ji Xinghall's people. That's right, it was Ji Xinghall's people. Especially that young man. I recognized him. He's Ji Xinghall's shopkeeper Qin's nephew. Chapter 364 My Own Hatred. Naturally I have to take revenge for myself. Ji Xinghall? Very good. Ji Xinghall? Heshi's body released an ice-cold loftiness. The gloom in her eyes extinguished, just like a ghost. You guys recuperate well. Without my order you can't leave this medicine cauldron. After she finished speaking, she turned around and quickly walked away. Sure enough, on a table inside the central room there was a piece of paper. On the paper there were arrogant words written on it. Shiyu, if you wish to save little Gunyang, then before Zisher, time today you must go alone to the eastern outskirts of Yanjing City. Once you reach there, head to the residence that's 3 li to the north. If you pass the time or you notified Hell King to bring people, then you'll see us peel some skin off of little Gunyang. Remember, don't test my patience and come on time. When Heshi received the paper, the weak piece of paper turned into ash in her hands, dispersing onto the ground. Outside, the color of the sky was slowly turning darker and the sun had already completely disappeared from the horizon without a trace. Heshi didn't hesitate any longer. Turning around, she began to walk towards the outside of the room. But she only moved 2 steps before she saw Wu Exin in front of her and blocking her. Wang Fei, requesting for subordinate to be able to follow you. Wasn't it just a few bouncing clowns, too? Regardless of whether it was Ji Xinghall or someone else, if he wanted to kill someone, wasn't it as easy as a hand's turn? 3? Heshi indifferently shook her head. No need. You stay here and guard. Don't let Shi Jia and the others receive any harm. Because the piece of paper mentioned Hell King Manor, it meant that these people would likely be concerned dogs and jump over the wall. 4. Harming Shaoli. In order to ensure Shaoli's safety, even if it's 1 in 10,000, she couldn't take the risk. Wu Exin wrinkled his brows. This subordinate's responsibility is to protect Wang Fei. Let alone with the fact that these people's strengths can't be small if they dare to provoke Wang Fei. For Wang Fei to go into the tiger's den alone, if any mishap happens, then what does this subordinate explain to Wanya? Heshi sneered and slowly said, "The people they injured are my people. This is my, Nalan Heshi's, hatred. Since it's my hatred, I naturally have to take revenge myself. Moreover, the revenge has to be slow. I'll let these people clearly understand what type of people they shouldn't provoke. They will pay a terrible price." Heshi looked at Wu Exin and suddenly softened her voice. Just then, "Thank you for helping me add fire. Now, I ask you to guard this B courtyard. After all, this is a warrior at nascent soul stage. Others would agree to light their own fires and protect themselves. No matter whose order it is, this sort of emotion must be obeyed." In a daze, Wu Exin stood where he originally was. For a moment he didn't know what to do. Just then Wang Fei was thanking him? Asking him? Clearly he was just a low-level martial artist. But hearing her say words of appreciation, Wu Exin had a type of indescribable feeling of being overwhelmed by a superior. 5. Originally, he decided on a plan to not let Wang Fei take any risks. Under these cold, as ice and frost yet bright, resembling star eyes, For a moment he was unable to say no. Wu Exen let out a low sigh, covering up the embarrassment and strange appearance in his eyes. After muttering to himself for a moment, finally he took out a jade slip from his storage ring and handed it over to Heshi, asking Wang Fei to carry this jade slip on her. In the time of a crisis, Wang Fei only needs to pinch it into pieces and it can block all nascent soul stage martial artists' full-strength blow. And once this jade slip has been broken down into pieces, this subordinate will immediately get notified. The first thing this subordinate will do is rush to Wang Fei's side. Heshi was faintly startled. Soon after, she reached her hand out and took the jade slip, sincerely saying, "Thank you." Finished saying this, she no longer hesitated. Dodging around Wu Exen, she quickly left the courtyard, leaving on her flying sword. 1. Azisher. Time between 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. 2. Bouncing clowns. Their Jixing Hall. Fools. He, Wu Exen, doesn't take the threat seriously at all. 3. As easy as a hand's turn, something that doesn't require much effort. 4. Be concerned dogs and jump over the wall, to be driven to a desperate action. 5. Feeling of being overwhelmed by a superior, he feels humbled. Chapter 365. No one has run away, right? The last lights on the horizon faded away. Today the sky lacked the moon and stars. Miluo continent was entirely enveloped in darkness. At this moment, both sides of every street within Yanjing City were already lit up by lanterns. The entire street was shrouded in a dim yellow light. On the East Street, people were already extremely scarce because the weather was very gloomy and lots of shops had already started to close by evening. And Jixing Hall was no exception. Qin Hai was currently sitting cross-legged in the great master's chair and commanding a little manservant. "Let your hands and feet close the door quickly. Do you hear me? If you keep dawdling, I'll let you join your ancestors." How could I, this daddy, invite such a useless person to the shop? Simply is just losing face for our Jixing Hall. The little manservant answered yes and grabbed the plank, about to close the door. But just as the door was about to close, a portion of immense power unexpectedly came out from the plank. The little manservant stumbled back 2 steps as a gate pillar fell to the ground and broke, letting out a sorrowful howl. Qin Hai got frightened by this unforeseen event and went into a daze. By the time he came back, a slender figure had come out of the darkness and appeared inside the dusky, candlelit store. This youth was approximately 16 or 17, wearing clothes that were white and what the average martial artist would wear. Hair was held high up by a simple hairpin, exposing a bit of a beautiful and peerless appearance. This was clearly the appearance of someone who could have such an elegant face it could cause cities to collapse. But the youth's 2 phoenix eyes seemed to contain a coldness to them. All of a sudden, Qin Hai bounced off the master chair. Pointing at the youth, he blurted out, "Young fellow, what are you doing? Can't you see that we're prepared to close the shop? No matter what matters you have, come back tomorrow." His eyes looked towards the spinning young manservant on the ground, that was still holding the plank. Then his eyes dropped and slipped away. 3. He held out his hands towards Heshi and said, "But, just then you wounded my family's little manservant. Now, you have to pay 100 yuan crystals worth of medical expenses, otherwise, don't wonder why I'm rude." The look of the youth still remained frosty, but her mouth changed into a sneer. "Jixing Hall's people are all inside, not one has run away, right?" At first, Qin Hai was distracted, then he abruptly became angry. "Smelly young fellow, you no longer want to live anymore, right? Didn't you hear my words? You still haven't taken out 100 yuan crystals worth of medical expenses? What, don't want to give money and still wish to cause trouble? Don't look at what type of place this is." Finished speaking, he used the hand holding a cattail leaf fan and went to grab the youth. But his hand didn't even touch the youth's clothes when, all of a sudden, he felt piercing and sharp pain on the palm of his hand. Once again, Qin Hai became distracted for several seconds before he reacted. Afterward, he looked on helplessly as wisps of blood came out of his wrist. Soon after, his 2 palms popped and fell onto the floor. Actually, 2 palms were simultaneously cut off. Qin Hai's eyes were filled with alarm. Ah! His mouth was open wide, producing this mournful howl. But before his voice could spread widely throughout the quiet street, a purple vine wound around his neck, ruthlessly tightening around it, and didn't allow him to make another word. And the young manservant holding onto the plank had long been scared foolish. His whole body was trembling and his teeth shook, making gidge sounds. After a quarter of an hour, the purple vine disappeared and the little manservant quickly closed his eyes and fainted on the ground. This youth was evidently the person Ji Xinghel carried a vendetta against. Hushi. She made the young manservant lose consciousness and grabbed the plank, sealing the shop closed. Chapter 366 Caged Bird Warning. There's some cursing in this chapter. I've censored it, but here's a warning anyway. Soon after, from within her body, the purple vine twisted around and came out. It rapidly grew, quickly following along cracks in the door and the wall, growing all over Ji Xinghal's courtyard. Under the cover of the night, nobody saw that the both inside and outside of Ji Xinghal's walls were densely covered in purple vines. Additionally, this purple vine separated the two worlds through an enchanted barrier, allowing all the people inside Ji Xinghal to become caged birds. Nobody would escape and nobody could let out any sounds. A moonless and windy night was the best time for interrogation and murder. Hushi retook the purple abyss vine wrapping around Qin Hai. Qin Hai let out several violent coughs. Immediately he wretchedly howled like a pig being slaughtered. Because the purple abyss vine put down an enchantment, people outside couldn't hear any more sounds from inside Ji Xinghal. But, naturally, the people inside Ji Xinghal's courtyard could hear everything. So when shopkeeper Qin Fu heard the screams, he couldn't even be bothered to properly finish putting on his clothes before running out. As he was running, he also screamed, "That son of a b is tired of living. Daring to come to Ji Xinghal to cause trouble, do they know whose territory this is?" Qin Hai, who was originally wailing like ghosts and crying like wolves, immediately frantically threw himself over to shopkeeper Qin when he saw him approaching. Lifting up the arm that had been cut off at the wrist, he bawled, "Daddy, save me, You have to act as my master, My hand. My hand. It was all that smelly youngster. He in one swipe chopped off my hand. Ooh. Daddy, you have to take revenge for me, When shopkeeper Qin saw Qin Hai's chopped off wrists, he could only see the white bone inside the fierce-looking flesh. His two eyes blurred and his body staggered. Immediately, he was suddenly angry. Who? In the end, who was it that dared to hurt my son? I will dismember their body 10,000 times. Qin Hai was actually his only son. Although his spiritual base is heterogeneous and his innate cultivation skill wasn't good, but he certainly had a gift for studying medicine. At an earlier time, when Dr. Xie was in a good mood, Dr. Xie, promised to properly educate his, shopkeeper Qin, son. Originally, shopkeeper Qin didn't set his heart on this son. But Dr. Xie's words helped fill his, shopkeeper Qin, heart with hope. As long as he, Qin Hai, could gain Dr. Xie's inheritance, Qin Hai could become a doctor with a rank. How would their Qin family fear lacking an opportunity to achieve meteoric success in their life then? In the blink of an eye, when shopkeeper Qin was thinking about his beautiful dream, his son's two hands had been cut off at the base. What was the use of a low-level martial artist whose hands had been cut off? Could they study medicine? Could they practice magic? Absolutely not. His sole son was now a waste. Thinking up to here, shopkeeper Qin was seething with anger and Qin Hai was filled with more pain and more hate. Pointing towards the direction Hushi stood in, he bawled, "Daddy, it's him." It was him who suddenly barged into the store. All I did was ask too many questions, so he chopped off my hand. Ooh. Daddy, you must take revenge for me. Let this son of a bee's four limbs get completely chopped off by me. Shopkeeper Qin turned to face Hushi, who was sitting on the great master's chair. But when he looked at her, he got scared and jumped. He merely saw the faint yellow candle flame reflecting upon an exquisite, snow-white face that resembled porcelain. At a glance, it could be seen that this was merely a weak, untouched youth. Even more so, it was a handsome youth that had refined and beautiful facial features. But this youth's two eyes were deep, filled with icy coldness. Merely just looking at you with those eyes would cause someone to feel as if they were in the 18th level of hell or within some snow, unconsciously causing someone to shiver from head to foot. Chapter 367. It was you guys who dared? Additionally, there was also the imposing manner that emitted out of him. Clearly it was a weak body, looking at people from far away. But it was as if he could crush ants without any extra trouble, causing shopkeeper Chin felt an unspeakable feeling of fear. He stumbled backwards a step and his voice trembled. Who are you? What do you want to do here? But just after speaking this, he suddenly discovered that this imposing and astonishing youth was merely at foundation establishment stage. At first, shopkeeper Chin was shocked. He found it hard to believe. Soon after, he felt ashamed, which turned into anger. He was scared by a youth at foundation establishment stage. Although shopkeeper Chin himself was also just at foundation establishment stage, Ji Xing Hall had numerous bodyguards. Among these, there were no lack of experts at meridian stage. For himself to be scared out of his wits by an insignificant youngster at foundation establishment, if this matter was spread out, other people would laugh until their teeth fell out. Thinking up to here, shopkeeper Chin suddenly felt irritated. Facing towards the bodyguard behind him, he shouted, "You group of wastes, what are you doing still distractedly standing there? Did you not see this son of Ab injure my son? Still haven't given it to me? Let her be chopped up into a pulp. Whoever gives higher revenge and gives me an inch of her hand will be rewarded with a replenishing spirit pill by me." Saying this, shopkeeper Chin's sinister and resentful gaze looked towards Heshi and coldly said, "Nothing more but an insignificant foundation establishment stage martial artist. You had the courage to come and provoke Ji Xing Hall. Today we let you enter with your life, but you won't leave here alive." Having heard what was said, the group of bodyguards loudly answered, "Yes." Quickly, they encircled Heshi. These bodyguards were martial artists hired by Ji Xing Hall. The lowest level martial artist was at high-rank foundation establishment stage. Heshi was merely an insignificant and weak youth at foundation establishment stage. How could they be compared? They didn't attach any importance to Heshi. So much so that they didn't even take out their flying swords. Instead, they took out regular swords in passing and turned to rush towards Heshi. After all, regular swords weren't as sharp. So, when cutting a person it would cause the recipient to feel more pain and more torment. They believed that this method would cause this youth suffering and make him cry out in anguish. This would let shopkeeper Chin feel some satisfaction. Heshi looked at the people who encircled her and her eyes held no interest in them. So much so that her mouth evoked a faint smiling expression, as if she were looking at a group of dead people. But very quickly, the smiling expression on her face morphed into a cold, killing intent after looking at the waist of the head of the bodyguards. She just saw that the male was no more than 30 years old. His face was 3/4% the same as shopkeeper Chin and Chin Hai's. Hung around this person's waist was a storage bag, and this storage bag was one that Heshi recognized. It was precisely the one that Heshi had gifted to wet nurse Chin. Heshi narrowed her eyes. It was only until the bloodthirsty look in her eyes passed before she fixed her attention onto the male and slowly said, "The courtyard located on the east side at the foot of Tsang Mountain, was it you guys who dared?" Having heard what was said, the head male stopped in his steps. He and shopkeeper Chin turned to look towards each other, laughing out loud. "I was still wondering where such a rash youth came from. Unexpectedly, you rushing over to provoke my Ji Xing Hall was originally for revenge." Shopkeeper Chin narrowed his eyes. With a grave expression he said, "Why would you come here? Thanks. Was there not a slip of paper left telling you to go to the residence in the eastern outskirts? Could it be that the youth standing before him was the brilliant genius Dr. Shi that Dr. Xie told him about? Why would he come to Ji Xing Hall? Wasn't he supposed to go to the courtyard in the eastern outskirts? Dr. Shi and the others had already set up a good trap. They were just waiting for her to walk into it. Only, it didn't matter if she didn't go to the courtyard in the eastern outskirts. It was no problem if she came here as well. Chapter 368 Brutal Killing. A greedy smile showed on shopkeeper Qin's face. As long as he could capture this youngster in Jixing Hall, then how could Dr. Xie not acknowledge the situation? At that time, he, Qin Fu, wanted to fish up advantages. How was this not as easy as a hand's turn? Thinking up to here, shopkeeper Qin immediately loudly said, "Don't kill this youngster, catch him alive." Qin Hai didn't dare anymore after shopkeeper Qin said this. At this moment, although the bleeding in his hand had stopped, there were still bursts of sharp pain that tortured both his body and mind. His whole heart was filled with loathing. To add on to the fact that his hand had been broken, this was equal to the fact that he would no longer have a future after this. How could he agree to leave the matter at this? "Daddy, didn't you say that you wanted to give me my revenge? Why would you let this smelly youth get away?" Shopkeeper Qin didn't pay any mind to his son. Instead, he smiled evilly towards the head male. "Uffing, I only care if his life is left. As far as whether his hands or feet are broken, it doesn't matter to me. When you start, pay attention to this." The male who was called Afeng was the same one mentioned by Zhang San, shopkeeper Qin's nephew, Qin Feng. Originally, the relationship between Qin Feng and shopkeeper Qin was separated by 1,000,000 miles. But Qin Feng's aptitude for cultivation wasn't bad, and at 40 years old he already got to meridian stage. To add on to the fact that he was very firm when doing things, it caused shopkeeper Qin to think highly of him. Even Dr. Xie was rather respectful to him. This time when they attacked the Bee Courtyard in Song Mountain, inside Jixing Hall only Qin Feng and his several younger brothers could participate. The other bodyguards in Jixing Hall didn't even meet the qualifications. At this moment, having heard shopkeeper Qin's words, Qin Feng looked towards the boss and laughed out loud. "Be at ease. I'll definitely play like a cat with a mouse and nicely tease our little godly doctor. How could I act like I did to those trashes from Bee Courtyard? If he truly died, Dr. Xie may not look for me anymore." Listening to their dialogue, Hashi's mouth slowly picked up. "Looks like I don't need to ask anymore. You guys definitely had a part in it." "We had what?" Qin Feng disdainfully looked towards Hashi, rubbing his chin. He chuckled. "It was nothing more but a group of wastes. They still dared to rebel. Haha, what a pity. They were only chi refining stage martial artists. Even if they went all out and rebelled, how could they escape out of our palms?" Saying this, he still looked at the crafty-looking little brother standing next to him. Smiling, he said, "AI, rat, do you still remember the expression of those group of people during their final struggle? That type of despair, that sort of helplessness. It really leaves a memory in someone. This rather die than submit type of people are my favorite. Watching them give up hope and become hatred but be helpless. That appearance is even more satisfying than fing a big talking young lady." The little brother who had been called a rat immediately started mischievously laughing and said, "How can I not remember? Especially that black and foolish big one. Feng Go, do you still remember the look on his face when he saw that old lady die? Haha, thinking about it now is hilarious. I cut off his hands and feet. He even wiggled around on the floor with all his might. Really was the same as a caterpillar. It's too funny. I messed with them so much it was hard for me to kill them." Once the rat's words were said, it immediately caused Qin Feng and his little brothers to burst into laughter. They lacked any worry. In front of Hashi, they began to discuss the pleasure they received when brutally killing the group of people in Bee Courtyard. Someone said, "I pulled their intestines out and twisted it around their neck. I watched them get strangled by their own intestines. It really is too interesting." Chapter 369 Optimum Tonic. Someone else said, "What a pity that Bee Courtyard was just full of a group of old smelly men. The women they could play with were just a few ordinary rough servant girls. They would be finished after just playing a few times. If they could play with the soft-skinned and tender servant girl, it would be too good." Qin Feng clicked his tongue and sighed towards Hashi. "This little genius doctor looks quite pretty. Soft-skinned and tender flesh. A beauty who's able to overturn cities. Compared to the most beautiful woman in a brothel, you are 30% prettier." Once Dr. Xie learns what he wants to from this person, will request for the genius doctor and properly play with him. Younger brothers, does this sound good? After all, today we captured him, this is an achievement. Everyone burst into laughter again, even the other bodyguards of Ji Xing Hall were influenced by this atmosphere. Towards Heshi, they kept adding more disdain and ambition. Heshi actually softly laughed. She didn't shallowly sneer, instead, she enchantingly smiled like a demon. She softly and slowly said, "Good, very good." Qin Feng was momentarily lost in her smile and he became distracted. Following which he heard her indifferent voice, that sound was silky and soft. As if it were a feather softly floating in his heart, causing his heart to feel as if he wanted to do something but he lacked the courage to. But his brain kept turning over the words, what does good mean, when suddenly a purple vine that seemed to appear out of nowhere shot in front of him. Without waiting for him to respond, the purple vine wrapped around his chest. The tip of the purple vine softly struck against his thoracic cavity and a pounding heart appeared in front of Qin Feng. Qin Feng's two eyes were open wide. It was as if he had seen a ghost as he looked at the purple vine that was constantly rocking in front of him and the live heart pulsing on the vine. The purple vine seemed to be very happy as it swayed around for a while. Suddenly, it shot out a dozen or more other roots. Following that, several sounds sounded out, Pu-chi, Pu-chi, as they entered inside Qin Feng's body. Qin Feng only felt a burst of violent pain rack throughout his entire body. Throughout his entire body, there were numerous purple vines inserted inside, but not even a single drop of blood could be seen flowing out. Moreover, what was even scarier was that within his body all the blood was draining away. No, it wasn't draining away. It was those dozen or more purple vine roots that were swallowing it. Save me. Qin Feng let out a hoarse yell, but when it came out of his mouth, it was so damaged that nobody could hear it clearly. Additionally, the heart in front of him was still swaying about. The purple vine suddenly rolled up. That heart let out a purring sound before abruptly exploding open. Afterward, it was completely absorbed by the purple vine. Qin Feng felt cold from head to toe. Up and down his whole body, he felt bursts of chilly and acute pain. Then, he looked on helplessly as his skin slowly turned old and shriveled up. What was left was just a layer of skin to wrap around the bone. Pang! Loudly sounded. The purple abyss vine had already thrown the completely sucked dry Qin Feng onto the floor. It swayed as it returned back to Heshi's side. The leaves on the vine continuously moved around, letting out rustling sounds. This was the purple abyss vine expressing its limitless cheerful emotion. Compared to spiritual energy and magical energy, the thing it loved to do the most was suck up human blood. Martial artists, in particular, had spiritual energy in their blood, which was the optimum tonic for it. It's just a pity that previously, Heshi didn't allow it to randomly suck blood. Adding on to that, the spiritual energy was very abundant in Heshi's space, so it wasn't often hungry. As a result, it didn't get to taste very many martial artists' blood. But today Master said, it could play and eat as it wished as long as it was the people inside this room, allowing it to breathe in as it wished. Purple Abyss Vine just finished eating all the man's blood and even swallowed his heart. This taste was truly too splendid. I can foresee how this may cause some issues if she allowed this before. Chapter 370 Terrible Monster. And inside this room, there was still so much delicious food. The more the Purple Abyss Vine thought about it, the more incomparably happy it felt. Master was really a good person. In the blink of an eye, the people who were just talking turned into mummies who were taking their last breaths. This originally amused and boisterous scene suddenly turned sluggish. A large part of the bodyguards had frightened expressions. And Rat, who was the closest to Qin Feng, suddenly came back, screaming, "Big brother!" Rat supported a person up, but all he saw was a mummy with a face full of terror. The skin on the person's entire body was wrinkled together. Except for the skin and bones, there wasn't even a drop of blood inside his body. The two eyes protruded inside the eye socket, holding dread in them. Upon seeing this, Rat immediately opened his eyes wide. Rushing towards Hashi, he yelled out, "Son of AB, you killed my big brother. I want you to pay with your life." After he said this, he took out a flying sword and advanced towards the people behind him. Snarling, "Everyone, let's unite. Even if that purple vine is difficult to deal with, there's only one person controlling it. If we unite and get rid of him, then we can get revenge for Big Brother." Once everyone came back from the fright, they felt that the words that Rat spoke were correct. Although this youngster was difficult to deal with, he was only at foundation establishment stage. Even if his magical weapon was strong, so what? Don't tell me he could block everyone's attacks? If he used just spiritual energy, at some point it would run low. Thinking up to here, everyone took out their flying sword and quickly launched an attack on Heshi. For a moment, all sorts of flying swords advanced towards Heshi. The screams all mixed together, shaking the earth with its power, causing the entirety of Ji Xing Hall's shop to shake. All one heard was, "Hong Long One." The place that Heshi was originally standing in got a huge hole smashed into it. Smoke was rising spirals around the surroundings of the hole, and dust was flying out. There was also the sound of thunder and lightning crackling and rumbling around the scene. Rat laughed. "This sort of attack, if you could still manage to dodge it, then Grandpa will—" After only saying half his sentence, his voice suddenly came to an abrupt stop. His face showed disbelief and alarm. The youth's leisurely and slow voice sounded in his ears, but it sounded as if it was coming from hell. "I escaped, what will you do? Hee, you can only die miserably." After the voice fell, Rat's entire body was rigid. Unexpectedly, he was unable to move even one step. The other bodyguards in Ji Xing Hall were the same as well. It was as if someone cast a body-freezing spell on them. They couldn't move an inch. These bodyguards' faces were filled with fright. When they looked at Hashi, it was as if they were looking at a terrible monster. Clearly, the youth in front of them was only at foundation establishment level. How could he cause them to not even be able to move an inch? Don't tell me that he's a ghost? But, if they all just looked at each other, they would discover that at the back of each of their heads was a tiny silver needle. It was just that these silver needles had a large amount of spiritual power in them. This caused their dantians to stop circulating and the blood in their vessels to stop flowing, causing them to be unable to move or use their spiritual energy. The purple abyss vine was twisted around Heshi's arm. Her fair, white fingertips softly poked at its vines. Towards the people who were unable to move, she faintly smiled. "I never liked a sloppy job. Originally when I came here, I was going to give everyone a quick death. But you apparently didn't give me that opportunity. Seeing as you all take pleasure from tyrannizing people, when it comes time for you to be tyrannized, you must be a glutton for punishment." One Hong long rumbling sound. Chapter 371. Rest in peace. Rat's heart was filled with alarm, but he still loudly shouted, "In the end, what did you do to us? If you dare to kill all of us, the people behind us won't let you go." Heshi raised her hand and suddenly, the medicinal pill in her hand flew out. The pill landed in Rat's mouth and soon made its way down his esophagus. "Seeing as you're so noisy, it seems like you can't wait to often feel the feeling of being tyrannized. You can be at ease, I'll satisfy you." "What did you give me to eat?" Rat didn't get to finish speaking before he suddenly let out a mournful and miserable cry. His entire body resembled a small shrimp, curling up on the floor. The other bodyguards watched as Rat's complexion turned purple. The corner of his mouth was overflowing with blood and foam, so much so that they even thought that Heshi had fed him a highly toxic pill. Just when they were scared witless, they suddenly heard Rat let out a heart-wrenching and lung-tearing scream. He suddenly seemed to go crazy and frantically began clawing at his stomach. In the blink of an eye, he seemed to manage to claw open his stomach. After, he took out all of his internal organs. But this didn't seem to be enough. After taking out all of his intestines, Rat's face was still filled with suffering. He began to use his own 2 hands to pound his legs, hitting the joints. Until finally, he took a flying sword and chopped his own 2 legs off. He kept saying, "Don't bite me. Don't bite me." Everyone became stupefied seeing the scene in front of them. Obviously all he had eaten was a pill. Yet this martial artist, who was at the peak of foundation establishment stage, seemed to have gone insane. He cut open his own stomach, cut off his own 2 legs, and repeatedly rammed the joints in his arms into a wall. Even after his bones let out a kala sound, he still didn't stop. This scene was truly too terrifying. The eyes of the other bodyguards no longer contained hostility and fighting intent. All that was left was desperation. On the other hand, the Purple Abyss Vine was incomparably happy. After receiving Heshi's approval, it quickly rushed over to Rat's side and completely swallowed his flesh. In the blink of an eye, this hellish scene faded away without a trace. It was as if the previously miserable scene didn't even occur in the first place. But the scattered skeletons on the floor and howls of grief echoing in their ears allowed everyone to understand that what occurred just now wasn't some nightmare. From start to finish, Heshi's expression was calm. So calm it was close to coldness. It was only until Rat completely stopped breathing that Heshi lightly threw the medicinal pills in the air. Mildly smiling, she said, "Let me take a look. Who should be my next victim?" Ji Xinghal's bodyguards all simultaneously widely opened their eyes and let out "gi" sounds while shivering. This youth in front of them wasn't human at all. She was a devil, a ruthless spirit who crawled out from the depths of hell. After an hour, inside Ji Xinghal's main shop, over a dozen bodies have been disorderly put to rest. 1. The Purple Abyss Vine had eaten until its vine was smooth and round. Swaying and wobbling, it was almost unable to fly. And of those dozen or more bodies, not one hadn't become a mummy with no flesh. In fact, each of those bodies were left with wide open eyes. Each and every pair of eyes were filled with terror and suffering, as if dying still hadn't been able to free them from feeling desperation. If a woman with less guts was viewing this current scene, then there was a chance they would be scared so much that they wouldn't be able to sleep for several months. But as Heshi looked on, her heart didn't move an inch. All she did was blink her eyes a few times and slowly said, "Wet Nurse Chin, you can rest in peace. Heshi has already gotten revenge for you." 1. Over a dozen bodies had been disorderly put to rest. I believe that the scene was basically just a pile of dead bodies randomly put about. Chapter 372 Selfish Appearance finished speaking. At the turn of her wrist, Purple Abyss Vine turned into a purple shadow that entered into the palm of her hand. Turning around, Heshi began to make her way to the corner of the room, towards the back of a screen. Upon hearing the footsteps, shopkeeper Qin and Qin Hai, who were originally hiding behind the screen, seemed to be birds who were startled by the mere twang of a baoun. Suddenly lifting up their heads, their faces were full of fright as they looked towards Heshi. "You better not come over here. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. If you want something, I'll give it to you. Any of the items inside Ji Xinghal can be taken by you. I'm begging you not to kill me." Shopkeeper Qin's voice was filled with fright. Thinking about the anguished wailing of those bodyguards when they were at death's door, he was truly scared. Up until now, he had his doubts. Would they be able to successfully bring together Dr. Xie and this youngster? What were the odds of success? Even Dr. Xie had countless experts lying in wait, because this youth before his eyes was too ruthless, too decisive, and had countless methods. He watched Heshi walking step by step closer to him. The Purple Abyss Vine curled around her wrist lightly swayed around, causing its leaves to create rustling sounds. Shopkeeper Qin couldn't help himself anymore and began to shriek. Taking the son by his side, he ruthlessly tossed him towards Heshi. Having been pushed towards Heshi by Shopkeeper Qin, the originally frightened Qin Hai couldn't help but begin to push his entire body towards Heshi. The loyal and protective Purple Abyss Vine didn't wait for Heshi's order before flying out and rolling into Qin Hai's body. The sharp purple vine entered his body with piu-piu sounds. In the blink of an eye, it had already sucked his flesh cleanly and neatly. Upon seeing this scene, Heshi's lips couldn't help but lift up into a taunting sneer. Qin Fu, who just a moment ago was repeatedly shouting that he would take revenge for his son, used that son as a shield in the face of death. In front of life or death, a person's selfish and ugly appearances would come out. Looking at it would really let people feel amused but also disgusted. Shopkeeper Chin staggered along, throwing himself at the front door of the shop and began pounding on the wood door. He even took out his flying sword and began to repeatedly chop at the door, loudly shouting, "Save me! Save me! Someone inside Yanjing City is murdering people." As long as he could run away from Jisheng Hall, then he could stay alive. Because martial artists were unable to fly or fight inside Yanjing City. Murdering people was an even more serious crime. And every night, Imperial Guards patrolled every street inside Yanjing City. If he went to cry for help from those Imperial Guards, how could that Shiyu possibly contend against all those Imperial Guards? But, no matter how many times Shopkeeper Chin pounded on the wooden door, it didn't budge an inch. Furthermore, he had almost yelled until his throat was hoarse. But the entire time, the outside was quiet, nobody even heard his voice. Even more so, nobody would care about his life or death. A 5th-rank magical purple abyss vine at its peak would have a strength that was equivalent to a martial artist who was at the summit of Gold Core stage. Compared to Qin Fu, who was merely at Foundation Establishment stage, how could he possibly break the enchantment that purple abyss vine had put down? Frightened, Qin Fu urgently turned his head. He wanted to run inside the courtyard and escape through the courtyard's walls. But just when he ran 2 steps, his entire body was enveloped by a purple vine and was firmly held in the air. Hashi's icy cold voice sounded out, "Tell me, who incited the matters in Song Mountainsby courtyard? If you honestly and clearly answer, I can still give you a quick death." Shopkeeper Chin was suspended in the air by purple abyss vine. He felt the purple vine's sharp vines continuously moving around his body. This scared him until he pissed his pants, snot and tears rolled down his face. "Spare me! Spare me, genius Dr. Shi. It wasn't me. This matter wasn't done by me, it has no relation to me I'm only Jisheng Hall's shopkeeper, I don't know anything 1. Birds who were startled by the mere twang of a bough, someone who frightens easily, possibly due to previous experiences. Chapter 373 Eastern Outskirts Other Courtyard. Hashi's mouth lifted into a faint smile. "Don't know." She talked extremely slowly, but just when she just finished speaking the purple vine suddenly came out. After a whooshing sound, Shopkeeper Chin's hand had been nailed to the wall. Shopkeeper Chin let out howls that resembled those of a pig who was being slaughtered. Fishy-smelling water kept incessantly coming out of the crotch in his trousers, letting out these sounds. Hashi softly stroked the foliage of the purple abyss vine wrapped around her wrist. She quietly said, "This is your last chance. If you don't say anything, I'll give you a medicinal pill. I trust that you saw the way your subordinates died. Do you want to experience the feeling of digging out your own stomach and digging out your intestines? I'll talk. I beg of you not to feed me that pill, woo. Shopkeeper Chin had long been scared out of his wits and didn't dare to hide even a little bit of information. It was Dr. Xie. It was Dr. Xie who brought people to Be Courtyard. From the day that the both of you fought, he had been searching for you. But I don't know what he wants to find you for. All I know is that he's determined to win the secret methods on your hands from you. But these matters truly have nothing to do with me. I'm merely a shopkeeper who sells pills. I don't know anything. I'm begging you, young hero, to be a big person with big generosity. Let me off. I'm begging you to let me off." Dr. Xie? It was the arrogant 3rd-rank doctor from the day she saved Xiao Li's older brother. Then it seems like that day when coming to massacre Be Courtyard, they truly took away Xiao Li. It must have been to take the secret repairing broken muscles and tendons medical method in her hand. However, it was just for such an insignificant prescription that they went as far to cruelly murder the people of Be Courtyard, allowing wet nurse Chin to experience a violent death. Dr. Xie? Xie Chongming. Very good. Very, very good. Where is Dr. Xie? Shopkeeper Chin's voice trembled. Xie? Dr. Xie is in a residence in the eastern outskirts. People are waiting there for you to walk into the trap, to ambush you. Dr. Xie is also there. Sure enough, he had set up a good trap inside the residence at the eastern outskirts, just waiting for her to jump in. Heshi's mouth secretly curved coldly. The little Gunyong that you guys took, where is she? Shopkeeper Chin opened his mouth. Just as he was about to speak, the purple vine rustled about and arrived at his stomach. The sharp purple vine softly rubbed against his clothes, seeming to act as if it could plunge inside him at any moment. Shopkeeper Chin was frightened stiff. He no longer concealed thoughts he originally wanted to hide. At once, he loudly said, "That little Gunyong is also at the other courtyard in the eastern outskirts. She has just been imprisoned inside the basement. That basement is very well hidden. If the person wasn't one of our men, they wouldn't be able to find the entrance, no matter what." She has been imprisoned inside the basement? Heshi knit her brows. The purple vine followed along with her mood and softly trembled up and down. Shopkeeper Chin's body continually kept shrinking backward. Wailing, "Genius Dr. Shi, I have the map for the residence in the eastern outskirts in my hand. It even has the entrance to the basement on it. I'm willing to hand over the map of the residence as well as the method to getting into the basement to you. I only beg of you to spare my life. I beg you to spare my life." Heshi narrowed her eyes and arrogantly looked at him. "If the map you take out is real, I can spare you. But if the map is fake, even if I let you off today, in the future I have 10,000 ways to let you experience a life worse than death. I absolutely don't dare to deceive young hero." Having heard what was said, Shopkeeper Chin was overjoyed at the good news. His entire being frantically arrived in front of a medicinal cabinet. Softly, he patted it a few times when suddenly, there was a pung sound and a medicinal cupboard appeared. Afterward, a piece of craft paper, too, appeared alongside a jade slip inside the medicinal cabinet. 1. A big person with big generosity. Big person is Shopkeeper Chin saying that Heshi is superior to him in every way. 2. Craft paper. Craft paper is paper or paperboard produced from chemical pulp produced during the craft process. Chapter 374 Massacre of an Entire Family. Heshi took the craft paper. Glancing at it, she discovered that the drawing on it resembled the design of a building, and sure enough, there was a symbol marking the entrance and location of the basement. And that jade slip was actually the key to opening the basement. After Shopkeeper Chin handed over the map and jade slip, he warily watched Heshi. His voice trembled. "You agreed with me. As long as I handed you the map, you wouldn't kill me." "Naturally." Heshi walked outside as she stored away the map. Behind her back, Shopkeeper Chin's face exposed a sinister smile. The map had poison on it. The moment the poison made contact with blood, the person's throat would seal up. 1. You just had to damage a little bit of skin and you would be injured. Just moments prior, he saw Heshi's finger brush past a sharp point coated with poison. It was just that he didn't detect it at all. Or, he simply didn't care for these small wounds. In the end, it was just a careless and inexperienced youth. He was still able to trick him with such a trap. Just by walking 2 steps out of the door, this youth would lose consciousness and fall to the floor. Additionally, the poison would completely engulf this youth's spiritual energy. Now he just had to wait to capture that youth and take him to Dr. Xie to take credit for his work. But Heshi, who was a step away from exiting, suddenly stopped in her tracks. Slowly turning around, she exposed a hidden smile. "Are you guessing that, as long as I step out a step, the extremely poisonous 7 steps intoxication on my body would flare up?" He discovered it. Unexpectedly, he had long since found out, and even found out that it was the 7 steps intoxication. Cold killing intent quickly flashed through Heshi's eyes, then disappeared. The purple abyss vine on her wrist came out as if it was a phantom. Shopkeeper Chin's eyes were wide open and he frantically shouted out, "You said that you wouldn't kill me." The purple abyss vine quickly pierced into his skull. Inside his skull, it turned around in a circle before it unwillingly returned to Heshi. An Chin shopkeeper, who was previously kicking up a racket, now had a foolish expression on his face and continuously kept laughing. His entire body no longer had any trace of spiritual energy and his eyes were empty. He was clearly already an idiot. Heshi withdrew the purple abyss vine and slowly said, "I did say I wouldn't kill you because letting you live this way, compared to dying, this is far more interesting." Saying this, Heshi's long and thin fingers spun around in the air. In the blink of an eye, the purple abyss vine seemed to have received a command. In an instant, it flew up and turned into a purple phantom, entering inside her body. After about an hour passed, people finally discovered that there were frightened shrieks coming from Ji Xing Hall. It was the voices of the little manservant who had lost consciousness and the innocent part-time workers. Their shrieking attracted the attention of everyone nearby, including the Imperial Guard. But upon seeing the miserable scene, everyone couldn't help but hold their breath and feel a chill going up their back. Every one of the corpses were nothing but a thin layer of skin covering bone. Each one had wide-open eyes that were filled with fright. This allowed the medicinal hall that was used to save people turn into a place more frightening than hell. One after another, everyone was trying to guess who was so vicious and merciless, who was so reckless and bold, even going as far as to completely massacre Ji Xing Hall's family in front of the Imperial Guard. In addition, they were also able to escape without a trace. At this moment, Heshi, the ruthless murderer everyone was spiritedly discussing, had long since arrived at the eastern outskirts' other courtyard. Moreover, with the purple abyss vine's concealing abilities and the map, she was able to successfully locate the basement's entrance. One made contact with blood, the person's throat would seal up. It's essentially saying that this poison is extremely potent. The moment it touches blood, you're done for. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.